Chris Moore talks about how he and his canine partner Ziko were part of an operation to capture a capital murder suspect. So the cousin is in on this at this point?
Yes, like they just don't want him to die. So they want him to be taken into custody because they don't want him to die. During the brief, I voiced my objections. I'm like, hey, this guy has already killed multiple people, and we're going to go into a public area, right? In a large parking lot. So this is not going to end well. Anyway, it is what it is because that's where they had set it up, the family. So we end up having to roll with it. This guy, they pull up, they got eyes on him, and I'm staged off in the back, the parking lot, kind of discreetly. Normally I get Ziko out of the car door, but in this case I opened the center partition in my car and I just grabbed him from my car and he exits the patrol to my door with me. Anyway, so the guy pulls in, they get out and they start walk. Well, he, his spidey senses or, he's nervous or whatever. And he's looking around and he's real nervous. So he sees the, what we call the contact team approaching.
Welcome to Game of Crimes. Well, I hope I'm going to make it through this episode because I'm being attacked by my cat. She thinks it's time to eat as we get ready to do yet another episode 49 of Game of Crimes. Welcomes players, playerettes, dudes, and dudettes, and everything in between. I am Morgan Wright, your big host on the show, and I am joined literally by my partner in crime, who I meet at the airport occasionally, every now and then.
Steve Murphy, and you can call me Murph. Welcome back.
Oh, my God. This number one, this is going to be a fun episode, but number two, it's like we're going to do a couple canine episodes back to back, but yeah. I have my own problems with animals. Mm-hmm. I have a cat who doesn't realize Daddy has to do a podcast and is climbing all over my desk wanting to eat. So if you hear a meow in the background, it's not me.
They are good looking cats, I have to say.
They are good-looking cats, and they're so friendly. They're very, very loyal. So, hey, guys, everybody, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Just a little bit of quick housekeeping before we talk about what's coming up. Hey, go over on Hippo. Hit that Hippo. Speaking of hippos, we may talk about that for episode 50. But Apple and Spotify have 5 stars, both of them. Go over and just hit those 5 stars. Leave us a review. We certainly appreciate it. Also, head on over to our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. Everything's over there. We've got all of our books on that as well, too. All of our guests who have written books we have up there. We've got merch, our mailing list. Also, follow us on the social media at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. But where you got to be is Patreon. And Steve, we just recorded another hilarious episode of You Can't Make This Shit Up. And I'm telling you, some of these stories, you can't make this shit up. It is like, I was dying laughing just trying to get through a couple of these stories too.
You're not kidding. It just brings criminality to a whole new level of stupid. And so many of these guys that we talked about, guys and girls, are just bringing a really bad name to criminals worldwide. So you guys need to clean up your ranks.
Boy, I'll tell you what, and there's a couple of them that need some things cleaned out too. So,
well, not that one guy.
Oh, it's just everything falls out of him, man. There's nothing there. There's no more sphincter control on a couple of these guys.
True,
so anyway,
true.
That's where you got to be though. Patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Join us. We got great stuff coming up. We've got our live stream where we review movies. You guys pick. We put it out there. We've got a lot of great stuff too. 911, what's your emergency? We're working on our upcoming new special called DEA Narcos, talking about the real DEA Narcos Cali edition with Chris Feistel and Dave Mitchell. Telling you, we're up to 14 episodes now. I think we'll hit 16 by the time we're done. The most in-depth story you've ever heard. Don't have to read it. Just listen to the studs talk about what they did down in Cali to bring down the Cali cartel.
It's phenomenal. I've learned so much from these guys. It's exciting to listen to them. It's amazing the bravery and the tenacity, the dedication to completing their mission that you're going to hear. So really, you do. I'm in awe of these guys, and they were doing stuff in Colombia that Javier and I weren't doing. So it's very cool, very, very cool.
Yeah, like there was something they were about to do at the end of episode 12, taking one for the team that you and Javier never had to do. So
damn right.
You will have to listen to that one to find out what it is. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So also head on over to paypal.com. Use our email, gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com or paypal.me/gameofcrimes, whatever it makes it easier for you to support the show and help us bring you just fabulous content. But quick disclaimer, this is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things and bad people doing stupid things and bad things to good people. We take the story seriously, but
ladies and gentlemen, you know us. We never take ourselves serious. This is going to be a lot of fun.
And before we can get to the fun, we've got to get to the next fun part. So I have to ask you the question, Murph. Do you know what time it is?
I know what time it is. It's time for Small Town Police Blotter.
Hey, you're getting faster at that, man. You see, you're out of Florida for just a couple of days, and already things are speeding up mentally and cognitively.
I'm out of my turtle atmosphere right now.
So, Steve, you ever responded to a call as a uniformed police officer where somebody said, hey, I heard threats. They said, like, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to shoot you. I'm going to do stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, a caller in the 500 block of West Dunbar Avenue reported that her neighbor was making banging noise and screaming, I'm going to expletive kill you. Probably I'm going to fucking kill you. Police made contact with a neighbor who said he was threatening his roommate's cat because it spilled water on the carpet. Police determined the man didn't actually mean any harm to the cat since it was in the bathroom for a air quotes, timeout when officers arrived.
Oh, good Lord. Jeez. Well, you know what? You got no reason to be mean to a cat. It does piss you off sometimes, but damn, you don't have to kill it.
Well, it's not a crime to threaten to kill a cat. Cats are not humans, but I'll tell you what, though, you got to be careful, man. Cats will claw your eyes out while you're sleeping, but not my cats. My cats love me.
The Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals will get your butt too. That's serious stuff.
So will I. Speaking of animals and serious stuff, Steve, this comes to us now from Winchester, Oklahoma. Population 516.
Salute.
Steve, you ever get called to a disturbance as a cop?
Oh yeah. Hated it.
Yeah. Well, this. I've never been to this kind of a disturbance. Disturbance caused by animals with guns.
Oh.
On Sapsucker Road.
Well, that's a good name.
I'm sorry. How do animals have guns?
Tell us more.
They don't have opposable thumbs. How are they going to hold something and pull the trigger?
That's right. Good question.
This is fake news. I gotta drill down on this and find out what the hell's going on in Winchester, Oklahoma, population 516, where they feel, is crime so bad you have to arm the animals? Inquiring minds want to know. All right, this one comes to us closer to my area, technically your area because you're filming it right now, somewhere in Virginia. We won't disclose your actual location because it's a hotel room and you're trying to stay covert and undercover. But this comes to us out of Falston, Maryland, population 8,958. Salute. Steve, you know the old World War, the old military saying, somebody's approaching, they go friend or enemy.
Uh-huh.
Well, this one is friend or enema. After giving himself an enema, a Falston man reportedly became extremely confused and argumentative.
Man.
That's it. Friend or enema.
That says it all.
Let's
don't go there, literally.
All right, so I saved this last one for last because, again, you can't make this shit up. This is kind of an homage to the episode we just did.
Okay.
Steve.
Yes.
Have you ever had people who had a hard time showing up to court? Wouldn't you put out a warrant for their arrest, and then when you finally get them, and judges normally when they do that they revoke their bond, right? Because if you don't show up right,
yep.
Unless you're Susan Lynn of Rio Dell, California, population 3,400.
Salute.
She was picked up on 6 warrants alleging petty theft, public drunkenness, child abandonment, possession of a hypodermic needle, possession of a fraudulent check, 5 vehicle code violations, and 23 counts of failure to appear in court after being released on her own recognizance. So what kind of a bond do you think she got?
Personal recognizance.
She was later released on her own recognizance.
23 times, so now it's 24 times. Where was that at?
This Rio Dell, California.
Well, there you go. That explains it all right there, doesn't it?
Oh, my God. Well, that explains what's coming up because we kind of had an animal theme here, for some of our stuff. And this next one is a continuation of our animal theme because we had a great episode with Randy Tooman. I mean, just the stories. Think about it. Enough fentanyl to kill half the state of Texas. Technically, it's the Republic of Texas. They like to be called the Republic. But $100 million worth of fentanyl.
Unbelievable. Unfreaking believable. These guys are, what they're doing out there with their dogs, they're superstars.
Man. Well, so now we got Chris Moore coming up too. Chris is with the Harris County Sheriff's Office down in Texas. He's got a different type of dog. So Randy was basically a narcotics dog, working dog like that. Now Chris has a patrol dog, and a tracking dog. And so we're going to get into a couple of stories, that Chris has. And one of them is we're going to talk about them going after a capital murder suspect and the things that you have to do, especially when you've got a fugitive task force after this guy, your concerns about that. And then we tell another story too about, and I will tell you, I don't want to give too much away, but let's put it this way. I will tell you right now, Chris saved this guy's life by using his dog.
Yeah.
In the second one. So and it's just amazing when you see the loyalty these guys have to their animals and
Right.
and the handlers have to their dogs and vice versa. I mean, these dogs are just amazing.
And thank you to Christy Schiller again for introducing us to Chris. And if you remember from some of the previous episodes, check Christy out at Canines for Cops and Canines for Kids. Unbelievable what she's doing to support law enforcement around the country.
Yeah, caninesforcops.org. Go over there, hit that donate button, help support the cause. And like the other thing, Chris, I'll give you one quick stat he said out of his episode. He said that they haven't bought a dog, I think, since 2012 or 13. Over 40 dogs have been supplied to Harris County.
Wow. Fantastic.
Alone.
And I think Canines for Cops has donated over 300 dogs now to law enforcement agencies.
I think we estimated the value alone at that out of all the dogs. I mean, had to be, I can't remember what he said, like couple $100 million or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I forgot, but it's like, it is an amazing number.
Yep.
And these guys are good, but the only way we're going to find out about the story, Steve, is for us not to talk about it and for us to actually bring on somebody who knows something about this. So I have to ask you to get ready for this. Steve, let's get ready to rumble. Are you ready to play the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the original, unadulterated, and pet-friendly Game of Crimes?
Here we go, everyone. Get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. Let's talk about Chris and his dog.
We'll put it on pause.
Well, here we go, folks. We're recording, and already we're talking about the bowel habits of males over 60. It's a good thing you guys missed that. Chris, you're not over 60, are you?
I am not yet.
Not yet. Anyway, guys, hey, welcome back. This is Game of Crimes. And as you guys heard in our intro, this is another installment of some brilliant work Christy Schiller has done. And she has found brilliant people, which is me and Murph, to go find more brilliant people like our next guest. So Chris Moore, welcome to Game of Crimes podcast, buddy.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely great to have you here, Chris. Thanks for coming on the show. And it's a true honor to have you. And for those that y'all forget about Christy, Canines for Cops, Canines for Kids. Look it up.
Yeah. And donate. Go over there and donate and do well, because if you don't, she will track you down. She's got 300 cops on speed dial with dogs. She will find your ass.
And that's not a joke.
Oh, no, I know.
No, she is a
her.
force of nature, which is, so as we do with everything, Chris, let's talk about this thing of ours. How did you get involved in this thing of ours we called law enforcement? Because during the pre-call, we talked a little bit, you got some good training because your dad was Army, which even though you ended up going into the Marines, as we'll find out, which was a career path maybe you should have rethought. But anyway, but you started off good training by your dad going to the Army. So let's talk about, how did you get into this thing of ours? You started off by serving our country first. How'd you do that?
Well, real quick story. I was fresh out of high school, and my dad, blue collar. He spent, I think, 12 years in the Army. He told me.
Where were you living at the time?
I grew up in upstate New York, Oswego area. And my dad told me at 18 that you could either get a job, pay rent, go to college, or get out and join the military because you can't live here for free. And so I decided that I was going to try college for about 6 months. I did a whole lot of drinking, didn't do any studying, and realized that maybe I needed a different path. Buddy of mine, I've always wanted to be in law enforcement. So a buddy of mine at the time.
Why?
I just always was. I was always fascinated with law enforcement. The nature of it, just the looking for bad guys, catching criminals, helping people. That always intrigued me. And as I got more into it, the more you get more intrigued, right? You find out about the specialty things. You find out about all the cool high speed, low drag stuff, right? And then you're like, oh my God, that's cool.
So what were your favorite TV shows?
Geez, I'll probably date myself a little bit. I grew up.
Hey, you're younger than we are.
So, I didn't watch
Mars was Car 54. Where are you? That was
Yeah.
I don't really recall a whole bunch of TV shows. Like, I grew up in the age where, it's like come back in when the street lights come on. Didn't watch a whole lot of television. I could tell you like maybe like the A-Team or something, we watched as kids or something, but nothing specific that really, as you ask me, I'm like, man, I don't know of any TV shows that, really.
We were just wanting to make sure it wasn't Miami Vice, because everybody we've talked to that have gone to narcotics or stuff, everybody watched Miami Vice.
No, and I didn't have any of those pants either. I didn't have any Ziko pants or anything like that growing up.
See, Murph, not everybody liked Miami Vice, huh?
What kind of pants?
The big balloon jean pants that were like pleated and stuff that everybody wore back in the 90s.
Don Johnson wore, and that Hugo Boss suit and whatever else. Yeah.
See, I don't even know what they're called.
See,
but I love Miami.
We'll
Vice.
get you a set.
No, thank you. I'm a little old for that now. I'm good in shorts.
All right.
So you always loved law enforcement, but you decided to go. Why'd you pick military?
Well, because I knew that. So I always wanted to be a policeman, and back when I came up, you either had to have college and or military experience. It was a combination or one or the other in order to get law enforcement. You couldn't just come with a high school diploma in many places. So I decided that I wanted to go the military route, because it would pay for college and it would also give me the experience training. I decided I wanted to enlist and become a military policeman. Initially, because my dad, I signed up with the Army. And then I was supposed to enlist, and a Marine Corps recruiter had been, talking to me, of course. But the Army had the better bonuses, it's a bigger branch, and they had bigger signing bonuses. So, it's where the money is. So I was going to sign with the Army until I found out that he had told me I would be a military police, but on my paperwork it said 11 Bravo, which anybody knows is 0311 in the Marine Corps. It's a grunt.
Infantry.
So the day I was at MEPS to swear in, I don't know what the acronym stands for, but
was
basically
that the processing center or something?
Military enlistment processing or something like that. It's where you go to swear in and do all your paperwork with the recruiter before they ship you off to boot camp. So the day I went to MEPS to finalize my enlistment with the Army, I found out that I was, slated to go Army or infantry, and I was all disgruntled. And I was walking past the recruiter's office, and the Marine Corps recruiter that I had been talking to saw me. He said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm here to enlist." And he goes, "Come here." Pulled me in his, they're shady. They just want to get that number. And
everybody's got to hit their number. Yeah.
You'll do. Can you fog a spoon? You'll do. Come here. So he calls me in there. He goes, "You want to be military police, right?" He goes, he showed me on the chart, they got these little, back then it was all on paper, 5811, which is military police. And I think this was in January. And he goes, you leave February, at the time he said February 21st. I said, "That's guaranteed." He goes, "Yeah." I said, "I'll sign it right now." I signed it right then. As I'm walking, I blew off the Army recruiter. I'm walking up to the master sergeant's office with the Marine, and the Army guy sees me. And then the shitstorm erupts. These two guys get into a pissing contest, right? Because the Army guy outranks the Marine Corps guy by he's E6 and the Marine Corps is E5. So they're having a pissing match, and finally we get up to what we call top master sergeant's office, and he's the head motherfucker in charge at the MEP center.
HMFIC, baby.
That's right. And he says, I didn't know it at the time, but I think I was telling you during the pre-interview. I didn't realize the nature of this, but when he put the Army guy was getting hot. But he put the Army guy in parade rest, which is basically shut your mouth and come to attention and stand there and sit there and look pretty. And in hindsight, I was like, oh, he just got punked. He punked him, put him in parade rest, and then he asked me, he goes, "Mr. Moore, where do you want to go?" And I said, "Look, Master Sergeant," I said, "I wanted to go with the Army originally because of X, Y, and Z." I said, "But I found out he told me a white lie, let's call it." And I said, "I just signed up with Marine Corps." He says, "Is that what you want to do?" I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "You're done. This meeting is over." And I ended up going.
That's somebody making a decision.
Yeah, they were never afraid to make decisions, even if they were stupid. But somebody's making a decision.
Stupid decisions are usually made by E3s and O1s. So
this is true.
By the way, you know who the most dangerous man in the Army is, Chris?
No.
Second lieutenant with a map and compass. So
Only if you listen to him.
only if you listen to him. Or what's the other thing too is what's the most dangerous person in the airmen? It's a first lieutenant that says, "Sir, I have an idea." No, shut the hell up. Anyway.
Well, it's funny in the Marine Corps. It's actually in I forget but the regulations that a second lieutenant you can call. You either have to call him sir, or you can call him Mister. It's almost like they're punking the second lieutenant right off the bat, because I mean they're fresh out of college, they're green under the wet under the ears and all that stuff, and you're taught in military to respect rank, but you also see it in reality. I had a master gunnery sergeant tell a first lieutenant to get out of his office. So a senior enlisted guy, he didn't give a shit. He'd been there 25 years, salty. And he was going to chew my ass. And he told
a senior NCO who's salty like that. Yeah.
He told him, hey, you can wait outside, Lieutenant. And the lieutenant said, yes, sir, and left. I was like, damn. So
kind of reminds me of a Heartbreak Ridge when you're watching, Clint Eastwood.
Exactly.
He's got the Congressional Medal of Honor thing there, dicking around with that major who's kind of an asshole. But so how long did you spend serving our country as a Marine, now formerly on active duty?
I did 4 years.
What was where'd you go? Where were you stationed?
I actually was stationed. It's closed now, but it was Marine Corps Air Station El Toro on the West Coast in sunny California.
Well, it's closed because it got blown up in the movie Independence Day.
That and all the toxins that they had in there. I mean, the carcinogens. I guess they filled the water table with that and then moved.
Those damn aliens. That's what it was. You shoot down all those spaceships, and it caused all that toxic stuff.
It did. It did. They've actually got. It's funny. They got websites about all that stuff. It's crazy to realize how much jet fuel and.
Well, that's what's happening over in Hawaii right now. The Navy's closing down that one fuel depot in Hawaii because it's been leaking for like 40 years.
Is that all? It's crazy. It's just broke in the Marine Corps. That's just broke in good. That's
we're just getting there. We're just almost in its prime. So what'd you do? So I assume then you were able to fulfill your role as military police in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I got to be military police, and I got to choose. When you sign up, you get to choose like 3 duty stations. Like your wish list. Mm-hmm. You never get them, but anyway,
they make you feel good for 30 seconds.
You think about it, and then they send you where they want you. But I got stationed in El Toro, California. And El Toro at the time.
Where'd you want to go?
I did actually want to go West Coast, but I wanted to go to Pendleton. But you don't get to say, "Hey, I want to go." Here it's just East Coast, West Coast, or overseas. That's what you get to pick.
Jeez.
Well, I mean, hell, El Toro is. If there was ever an argument for people re-enlisting, send them to El Toro. It was like, I mean, you living in like Laguna Beach on government housing, right? Like, how could you afford to live in Southern California except for in government housing? You know what I mean? Like, I had a blast. But in any case, El Toro had one of the full-time. There was only 3 in the Marine Corps. They had one of the full-time special response teams, which is like a tactical response. And military police did that. So I started out, your typical gate duty, patrol duty, all that stuff. But then ultimately, I got assigned to the special response team, and that's where I first got introduced to tactical stuff and SWAT and all that good stuff. And the K9s. El Toro also had a K9 program. Full kennel on base, et cetera, et cetera. So I got to, I don't know what you want to call it, but a limited environment, I got to see all the specialty stuff that law enforcement does, in a very small pond, right? Like you get to see it, I guess, sheltered, right? So it was cool, but it opened my eyes and it made me want to do more things.
I got to tell you, I was always impressed. It's like Murph, he used to be a railroad cop, and in all his time, nobody ever stole a railroad car.
Not once.
And
that's done good, didn't I?
Yeah, you did good. And that's my whole thing. In 200 years of guarding gates with Marines, nobody has ever stolen a single gate. So I salute you for that.
100% successful. I mean, yeah.
Hey, Chris, people can be a leader or be a follower. We decided to be leaders.
That's it.
But I will tell you this, though. The one thing I really appreciated the Marines for, we had a chance to, I did some stuff for the State Department over in Pakistan, post 1 at the embassy there, were all the Marines, and people don't realize there's not a large contingent at a lot of these embassies. It's not like you see on the movies, right? Where you got, a whole brigade of Marines. No, you're lucky if you got 12?
Yeah, 12 to 20.
Some of these.
Yeah.
Yeah. but they're highly trained. And let me tell you, we had one phone and had one number on it, and you press and held one for post one, and 4 Marines in a car would come extract your ass if you got into trouble. So we made friends with them.
Yeah, definitely.
Not to mention in an embassy environment, they're the ones that go around and search the offices at nighttime. When they find classified stuff, you get a pink slip. And if you get 3 pink slips, you get kicked out of country. So it behooves you to befriend
That's right.
the Marine
Which we
cards.
discussed about, which would be episode 14 of The Real Narcos, talking about the Real Narcos Cali edition. And you can only find where, Murph?
On Patreon at Game of Crimes.
Patreon.com/Game of Crimes. See how we shamelessly plug even our Patreon channel while we're doing interviewing a stud like Chris Morse.
Cheesy. We're cheesy.
Smooth.
I'm telling you, smooth operator. So
I like this guy.
So you do 4 years serving our country. Why did you decide not to re-enlist? What was your decision to move on?
Well, I mean, ultimately, the Marine Corps is fun. I'll say that. And of course, the older you get, you only remember the fun times. You don't remember all the stuff they make you do. But I was in Southern California. I had the opportunity to do a lot of special details. Went down and did presidential detail with I hate to say this, but Bill Clinton during my time, and went down to Argentina, spent some time in South America, had a good time. But I knew when I got back, I had missed my window to get shipped overseas, because every 4-year deployment, you're going to go and do a 10-year overseas if you're a Marine. So I knew when I got back that I was going to get shipped to Okinawa or Iwakuni, Japan. And being that my goal was to be in law enforcement, civilian law enforcement, that would jeopardize, it's hard to do things from, overseas. The internet was just coming online, right? So you didn't have the ability, you could do things now. So I knew that if I went over there, I'd never be as happy as I had been in California. And I knew that it would jeopardize me getting the ability to, feet on the pavement kind of thing, and put my applications in and do all the things that I wanted to do to become law enforcement. So I got out while the getting was good.
So where were you at when you punched out? It's still El Toro?
I was at El Toro. Like I said, they gave me the major, the XO called me in, and he said, you want to re-enlist? Because I'd been considering it. And in one hand, he has my re-enlistment papers, and the other hand, he has orders for me to go to Okinawa, Japan. So I was like, "No, I'm good. I'm out.
I'm good."
Wow! Talk about baiting you.
Yeah. Sign here. Yeah.
Sign here. So you're the proud owner now of a DD-214. Where do you go after that?
Funny story is, so I was in 94 to 98. And I don't know if you guys are familiar, but back in that time, affirmative action was coming up real big. And I tried to get hired on in California because I didn't want to go back to New York, because I didn't want to go to the snow, honestly. So I wanted to get in law enforcement, either, in somewhere warm. So I applied with LAPD, and the recruiter calls me and basically tells me, he goes, you're not a female and you're not a minority. We got 1,000 guys just like you. He wasn't being mean about it. He's just like, hey, you don't have a very good chance of getting hired right now, because due to the fact that we have to, they had to catch up, right? They had to, they were so lacking in minority and female applicants that they were getting priority over average, white male with bad credit, right? I mean, that's got 100,000 of those guys.
Which is every E3, E4 in the military, right? They buy a car at $900 a month with 18% interest.
Exactly. So long story short, through some context that I had, I ended up coming to Texas with the guarantee that I was going to get fast tracked into the Harris County Sheriff's Office. So I move everything I have in my little car to Houston, Texas, and the fast track that I'm supposed to be on ends up being 1.5 years, and where I end up working as the paint department manager at the local Home Depot, because the fast track, the brother-in-law didn't really come through. So I was the Spring, Texas paint department manager for 1.5 years. Finally get my phone call, and with the sheriff's office, you have to become a detention officer first. So then, which means you work the jail. So I got my phone call. Then February 99, I go to the jail, start working as a detention officer. And then up until, I want to say it was May of 2000, something like that, I believe, I got to go, based on seniority, how long you've been employed is how they pulled the cadet class for police officer. So I got to go to the police officer academy in May of 2000, graduated in October of 2000, and the rest is history.
Wow. So you finally hit out. So what's your we're going to get into your work with canines, but when you first get out, where do they assign you?
So I get out of the academy, and again, back in that time in the late 90s to early 2000s, everybody goes back to the jail. The sheriff's office responsibility is primarily the jail, according to state law kind of thing, right? So went back, worked the jail for, I want to say a year and a half, maybe 2 years, where at the time they had this tactical team called the Emergency Response Team.
Well, let me get that clear. So you were in the jail, but they selected you to go to an academy class. So you went training to become a sworn law enforcement officer, but you had to go back to the jail?
Correct. So then
Dude, who did you piss off?
That's everybody, though. That wasn't just me. Yeah. So everybody goes back to the jail. You start off what we call non-certified as a detention officer, go to the academy, get certified, and then come back as a certified peace officer. And then there was a gateway. After 2 years, you could take the patrol test, do the gateways, and attempt to go to patrol. But based on funding and everything else, the patrol test, which died every year, right? It expired every year. They would take 1 or 2, if any, a year. So like you got 100 applicants, young guys that want to go to patrol. And if you weren't one, good luck, see you next year kind of thing. Just because of the way the funding was, right? They didn't have the positions, the payroll spots in patrol. During that time, while I was on the patrol lists, there was an opportunity presented to me to, it was called the Emergency Response Team, which we'll get into that later. But at the time, they told us it was the tactical team, right? Because the sheriff's office at the time did not have a full-time active SWAT team. They had an emergency response team, which was based in detentions, but had done some things outside the jail, had done some tactical stuff, but basically gets to train and, wear all the cool shit and play, right? So young and naive, I signed up for that. I think I spent 4 or 5 years doing that. Had a good time. Again, I can't complain because even though we didn't do a whole bunch, they paid a lot of time and money for us to go do SWAT competitions. So, I'm getting paid to shoot bullets, run, and PT on duty. You can't really complain, right? It's not it wasn't a bad gig.
Not at all.
Did that, had a good time. A friend of mine, people get, reputation carries everything, word of mouth, even back then. And I'd always been a very, stern looking person, or, even as a young guy, had that military bearing. And they liked that. And the person that did the PT, the physical training at the academy, had promoted, and they needed to backfill his position. So they wanted a PT instructor and a military background to do we call it, if you're in the military, you know what it's called, the heavy, right? Be the bad guy, right? The drill instructor. So I got asked to go out to the academy and be a counselor, a basic police counselor.
No. You were Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, weren't you? Black and full metal jacket. You were Arlie Ermy. You were out there. Listen, this is my rifle. There are many like it, right?
Exactly. They so even, every generation talks about kindler, gentler, right? So even back then, my definition of what hard was is not what somebody 10 or 20 years ago was, because they tie your hands, right? Like we would say, hey, you failed this and you're gone. And they'd be like, no, give them another chance. You're like, well, what are we doing here? But in any case.
Why do you have standards if you're not going to?
If we're not going to enforce them, why have them?
And Chris, to your point too, when I went through basic for Army, I was going into RTC, but we all went through Fort Leonard Wood, 1979. All of my drill sergeants, Vietnam vets. These guys had seen the real shit. They had been there to watch people die, and kill people. So our definition of if you, suck it up, Buttercup, meant something different in 79 than it did in 99 or 2000.
Exactly. Then, you're cold. No one cares. So
a drill sergeant's yelling at you. Nobody cares. But now you can hold a card up to say, I'm being stressed.
And that stuff right there, it's amazing to me. But so I tried to bring that aspect. Now, again, it was watered down again, because number one, we're not the Marine Corps. And number two, it's, we're talking not mid 2007, 2008, something like that, when I was an instructor. But I tried to bring a little bit of cynicism and, jaded personality to it for sure, but I made it fun. So, I would punish them, or I would, but everything with a lesson and almost to a cynical, comic sense, right? Like, we're going to laugh at our own misery type stuff. You try to harden these kids up a little bit.
Make the best of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, how long did you last at the academy before either you decided to move on or they decided to move you on?
Well, it's funny. So I did 3 cadet classes out there, and they were about 6 months apiece. And then it was about, I think, a little over 2 years I'd been out there, and we got a new sheriff. And the new sheriff decided that we were going to downsize and all this, so on and so forth. He did everything by department seniority. So without going into the drama of it, I was not a senior guy, even though I had tenure at the academy. I had time and place there, but I did not have department seniority. So I got kicked out, or I reassigned, and went back to the jail for 6 months before I got to get back out to patrol. So for about 6 months, I was driving to work with my pistol in my mouth because I was assigned to the jail. So.
You might want to explain that to our listeners. Some of them don't quite understand.
So, it's a joke, suicidal, because working in detentions is not a glamorous job. It's not fun. It's very mundane. It's not anybody that wants to be a cop that, wants a career as a cop versus somebody that just wants a paycheck, right? Somebody that has a calling to be a cop does not want to work in the jail. Somebody that wants to be a cop wants to go be on the streets, be with the citizens, do something, what they would consider worthwhile. Not saying that the jail isn't worthwhile, just saying it's a different career path, right? And that's not the career path I wanted. So I was miserable.
They want a different level of adrenaline and excitement, and you just don't get that in the jail a lot of times.
No, you get to, hey, pick up your tray, inmate, fold your laundry, inmate. No, that's not what I signed up for. So anyway, 6 months of me petitioning and begging and, making and sending flowers to the patrol major's secretary, basically making friends with her. I got back out to patrol. I went to patrol and decided to make a point. So for 3 years in a row, I led the department, the agency, in arrests before I went to K-9. So I had
outstanding.
I had a good time in law enforcement or in the patrol aspect of it from 2000. What was it? Hell, I can't even remember. But in any case, I had a lot of fun. Myself and another partner. They realized that we were going to go arrest people anyway. So they actually started a formal proactive unit in our district because they knew that's what I was going to do anyway. Like, might as well call it and say it's our idea because he's going to go do it anyway. So we went out there and basically just hit the high crime areas for street level narcotics, weapons, and stuff like that. And that to me, that's where it was at. That was fun, chasing crooks.
Well, you're making a direct impact to your community too. You are removing bad guys and girls off the street. You're at least trying to stop the scourge of some of those things, which now is fentanyl. But back then, what were you guys dealing with? PCP, meth, what?
The gamut. I mean, obviously everything from marijuana, which, whatever your take is on marijuana. But, the main thing, marijuana is the gateway to crack cocaine, which we dealt a lot with, meth, ecstasy pills. A little bit of heroin. I didn't encounter a whole bunch. I mean, here and there, I guess it's a different demographic, I guess, from where I was working. And not to say that it wasn't prevalent, but the majority of the people that I dealt with was crack, PCP, dip cigarettes type stuff, or ecstasy on a daily basis. And your typical, firearms go with that type of stuff.
So, but you talked about now and then getting into canines. So did you get into canines because of your work the previous 3 years and doing that, or simply because an opportunity opened up? So tell us about how you got into the selection process worked for getting into canines.
So with Canine, oddly enough, he works for me now because I'm his supervisor, but he's a good friend of mine. He's been my friend for about 20 years. Good friend Larry Graves, he was a canine handler, and we worked an off-duty extra job together. And Larry had gone to Canine, and he knew how I worked, and he so on and so forth. And he was basically, like-minded people try to cling together, so to speak, and they try to recruit people that are like-minded or the people that they think are going to be good handlers or workers. So Larry had petitioned me a couple times to do it. And funny story is Larry had this crazy dog that he was training, and he'd come to work and he'd be all mauled up and his arms are all cut up and bit with teeth marks and stuff. And he's like, "Man, you need to come to Canine." And I'm looking at him and said, "Motherfucker, you're crazy. Get away from me with that shit."
So this sounds very much like Ted Dolan. If you go back and listen to his episode, Murph, remember that? The crazy dog, the one where they basically had to hit him over the head because he had latched onto him.
Yeah, no, that dog was a whole nother level of crazy.
Oh, you're not that dog.
Yeah. But Larry's dog. This dog was, we'll just call it indiscriminate. I like to say, you'll do, right? He don't care who. He'll do. He'll bite you. He'll bite me. Whatever.
Everybody tastes like chicken to a dog like that.
That's right. And so he ended up washing that dog out and getting a different one. But so Larry petitioned me, and then I interviewed for the position. Was the number one candidate. Got my first dog, Duke, in 2012.
Hey, back up before we get into that. Why did you want to? Was canine something you aspired to do, or because you saw what was going on, you wanted to do canine? Because I know you said you saw some of it back in the Marine Corps with their tactical stuff. Did you get an early on an affinity for wanting to work canines, or is that something that just developed because of your friend Larry?
No, not entirely because of Larry, but because I had seen it, and I always knew that I wanted to do something specialized, right? Like, so patrol is fun, but that's a, I don't know what you want to call it.
That's call to call. You're humping it every day. Responding to calls for service.
It gets. I mean, it's fun, but at the same time, it's finite. If that makes sense. Like, how many? I think I arrested like 1,000 people in 3 years, like literally 1,000 people. You know what I mean? Like, how long am I going to keep doing that? So on and so forth. And I saw there. Tactical canine specialty units has always fascinated me, either one. But then I saw the opportunity. We still didn't have a tactical team, but I saw what canines. I had called Larry a couple times on some dope calls as a patrolman. I had gone on tracks with them and where we caught the bad guy. And I'm like, you know what? This is another tool to make me a better at catching crooks, right? Like, I'm going to take this to the next level.
Oh, yeah.
So I was interested because it was, let's face it, I'll never be 18-year-old crooks never get any older, right? They're always 18 and we all get older, right? But you can outrun me, but you can't outrun my dog. And
that's right.
And so I was like, you know what? This is the next progression. This is where it's at. I'm gonna fuck some people up, basically. Like, you're gonna, don't run from me. You're gonna pay for it, right? Kind of stuff.
As the U.S. Marshals say, you can run, but you'll just go to jail tired.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And probably.
Hey, just out of curiosity, Chris, did you grow up with dogs?
I did, but they weren't like working dogs.
Just pets, right?
My parents had a cockapoo, right? Like a little poodle looking thing.
Well, there's a fine patrol dog to put in your car with you.
Fucking vicious, right?
Easy. That's what we had here in our house. It just passed away last year.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Good dog. Good family.
That's the shitty part about having dogs, though, is eventually,
Yeah.
Well, dogs are, and we've got cats now, but I love dogs. My daughter, son-in-law have dogs. They're great. Dogs are the only animals on earth that love you more than they love themselves. I think that's the best way to describe
unconditionally.
A dog.
Yes,
I agree.
But so long story short, I get selected. I inherit a dog from a handler. This handler passed away suddenly from a heart attack. So I get a dog that's about, I think he was like 7 years old. His name was Duke. Now, something to be said about Duke is Duke was phenomenal. So I don't know if you know much about Europe and how they do these things, but they title dogs over there, right? So it's like a certification process. A dog does X, Y, Z, it gets scored on it, and it gets titled. Okay, it's like a certificate of completion. Like, hey, this dog performed this well, and you got to have a minimum score to do so. This dog scored perfect on the PH1 for KMPV. And then only missed like 4 points on the PH2, and he was like third in the nationals when the dog was titled, right? So this is a bad motherfucker. But he was also stubborn. A good dog is a stubborn dog, and so we had our come to Jesus meeting in my backyard when we decided who was going to be alpha, and then from there we were good. And
how hard is it to inherit a dog from somebody else who's obviously got 7 years or 6 years of working with somebody else and their mannerisms and their idiosyncrasies? How tough was it to get Duke to respond to you?
It's kind of a mixed bag, right? So like you never know what somebody else has put into a dog. You never know the good, the bad, the different, right, of what I do versus what you might do with a dog. So there's that to overcome. But at the end of the day, a working dog, they're so eager to go to work. The guy or the girl that feeds them for about a week, that's mom or dad.
Becomes their new best friend.
Yeah. Because that's where, we talk about loyalty, but the dogs are tuned to work. They got to be dry. They have drive. If you're feeding them and you're spending time with them, you're the one. And so it some nuances, of course, when I got Duke, basically me learning what I call his buttons, right? Learning how to operate him. That was a little bit of a challenge, which is a fun challenge, but we bonded rather quickly because I put him to work. Like we did our 3-month basic handler class, and then we were out catching crooks. We were hitting it.
Where'd you go for your training?
The sheriff's office here, we do our own training. We've always had our own basic handler class. Where we do narcotics or explosives, depending on what your dog's forte is. We do 3 weeks of that, and then followed by a 9-week patrol class where the dog learned to track people. They learn handler protection. They learn area searches, vehicle extractions, the gamut, right? Anything a patrol dog would do. That's where we teach the basics. Now, once you get certified, and you learn your obedience and stuff like that, and you have to certify to a standard. But once you do that, that's just the beginning, because anybody that says a dog is ready, you're like a brand new patrolman with a dog, right? That when you certify class, you hadn't done shit yet. You know what I mean? The dog still hasn't seen. I make the analogy because I've had people that have failed deployments. You take a dog that doesn't know how to play football catch yet, and you try to throw a 100-yard pass, and he doesn't catch it. Why? Well, because the dog hadn't seen that example yet. The dog doesn't have that file, or for our age, that Rolodex, right? That file of, I've seen that picture before. I know what this is, and so sometimes there's a failure because the dog doesn't understand. So I say the basic class is just a drop in the bucket. It's the tip of the iceberg before you actually go. You go get your experience on the street, and the more experience you have, is how much better your dog becomes because he's seen those.
Yeah, it's no different than the military or law enforcement. You have to have a certain time and grade before you can get promoted to the next level because you haven't learned anything yet. You don't get on the job the first day and say, I'm ready to be a sergeant. No, it doesn't happen that way. So let's kind of bookend this with saying, so you get started with Duke, but your current dog is Ziko. And how long have you had Ziko?
I've had Ziko since the end of November of 2014.
And when is the first time you met this little legendary Texan called Christy Schiller?
So it all kind of runs in with Duke and Ziko. So I gotta tell you this story first, though. This is a Duke story, and then I'll get into this. So,
but we also need Duke stories, but we need Christy stories too. We need something about Christy.
Well, I'll tell you the Duke story later. The long story short, the department, we've always it's I don't know why, but law enforcement agencies always have a trouble budgeting or paying for whatever reason for canines. It's like, when a patrol car goes down, they anticipate that's a budgetary item, or uniforms or service weapon or you name it. It's a an innate piece of equipment. That's fine. But a dog, a living organism, there's some disconnect. And so
you've got medical, you've got food, you've got training, you've got all these other intangibles that you don't get with a human or a car.
And a dog, just like a person, one dog might work 2 years and have a medical issue and be retired, or another dog might work like Ziko has worked for 8 years, right? Like it is still going strong. So they don't know how to time it. They can't say every 3 years or 100,000 miles we're going to get a new car. Well, they can't say that with a dog. So they never budget for it. So long story short, here I am. I had Duke. I was a patrolman with Duke, blah, 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 blah. I had him a couple of years. I promoted to sergeant, went down to work IPC. I come back I made it back to K9, booking. I was the booking supervisor for about 6 months.
Wait a minute. So you've left the jail twice now. Now you're back a third time into detention?
Yes, sir. And that's why I won't promote again, because I am not going back. Any case, so I get back to K9 as a sergeant, and I get Duke back. So I have Duke, and he's probably, I don't know, he's 10 now at that time, and 10 or 11. Anyway, so I'm working Duke, and Christy Schiller had already started Canines for Cops, with Ted, and back in 2010. But this is really my first interaction with her, is because now I'm one of the Canine supervisors. And so I'm at we're running the Texas Canine Officers Olympics, which is the sheriff's office coordinates. Kind of our reciprocation to Christy for all the help she does for us is we coordinate, and I sponsored the Texas TCOL credit, right? For law enforcement officers, you get the law enforcement training hours. So my agency as an instructor, I sponsored that. And then we hosted it at our agency. So we set it up, we coordinated it. Obviously Christy did the majority with all the people, but we just basically gave them a place to do it, right? Well, at the end of these events, which is a week-long conference, we have what's called the Hard Dog, Fast Dog, which is basically just an exhibition of the dogs, how fast they run and how hard they hit, and how they take the people down. So I'm out there with, Duke, who's got whiskers as gray as mine, out there, and I'm running this, 12, 13-year-old dog. He looks like he should be on caster wheels, right? Like and Christy's over there. And she tells one of the guys, she's, God, how old is that fucking dog? Like, Jesus, like, is that inhumane? Kind of thing, right? Well, yeah. She sees me with him. She calls me over and she starts talking to me because we hadn't met yet, and we're talking. And sidebar to that is I'm also at the time I'm in a canine trainer school at the same time during this conference. And at the local vendor, I had seen Ziko. The department, I'd already tried to get him through the department. And the department said, no, we don't have the money for it. It's not happening, right? So I'm trying to make deals. I'm like, I'm going to make payments and I'm going to get this dog myself. I want this fucking dog.
Oh, here we go. Another E3. We're going to finance the dog at 18% interest at $900 a month, right?
Wash dishes, whatever, right? So I want this dog. So Christy, after talking to her a little bit, she finds out that I want Ziko. She does what Christy is known for doing, does all this behind the scenes stuff. And then at the gala, which is the culmination of the conference that night or the following night or whatever, calls me up there and says, hey, we understand Duke is, 12, 13 years old. We understand you want this. Go pick up your dog. So surprises me, and says, hey, go get your fucking dog. Like, and this is, I've known the lady for 2 days. And that's what but that's what she does to everybody. Like
that's outstanding.
So, I'm rarely at a loss for words, but I'm up there all like, emotional and, boo-hoo shit. So I go get my dog, and we go to training, and first night on the street with him, first 40, I got the record and no one's beat it. First 40 minutes into our first day of work, we caught one, burglarizing cars and took off, decided he wanted to run from us, which was not smart. And, Ziko, convinced him that was not a good idea. And then, he basically severed the guy's calf. And then we're at the hospital, and I'll never forget the guy's like, man, you were saying good boy to that dog. I'm like, yeah, well, he did a great job. Sorry, buddy.
No, I was talking to you, pal.
Yeah, you did great too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hey, real quick, tell us about Ziko. What kind of dog is he?
Ziko is always on, 100%. He is about a 72-pound Belgian Malinois. Ironically enough, he's from Serbia. So
are your commands in Serbian then?
Well, a little bit. Well, Duke was in Dutch. So Ziko's got Serbian, Dutch, and motherfucker. Because I get confused and I yell at him in whatever comes to mind. So that's Ziko should be Serbian, but yeah, he's got a hybrid language.
It's funny. So you know what? You should have gone back to the hospital, given that the bad guy, give him a participation trophy.
A certificate of completion. Something.
Everybody's a winner today.
I love it.
So yeah, but that's the thing too, is that you just can't, like you say, you can't outrun these dogs. We used to joke too, even on the state patrol, because our cars weren't exactly the fastest. They go, I could have outrun you. I said, yeah, you can outrun a motor. You just can't outrun a Motorola. I'll just call ahead, but you can't outrun a dog. So the record was what the amount of time it took to get your first caller. Was that the 40 minutes you're talking about?
Yeah. So, it's you typically, and it's, it's kind of, there's a lot of factors involved with things like that, but, I was never the one to wait around for calls. So I was out trolling, looking for my own, right? Like, so,
proactive stuff.
It was going to happen.
Wait a minute, you're not doing your job. That's nothing to be ashamed of there, my friend.
I always look, you go back and you look at my dash camera. It's funny because it was like, I'll never forget. I pulled into this. It was this back storage lot or parking lot of a Walgreens at a shitty area of town, and you see my car pull in, and I see these two guys, and they're looking in windows of cars, And at first you see me like, I give basically the cop, oh, fuck it, whatever, kind of, and I start to roll off, but then my ego gets the better of me. You see my because dash camera kicks on 30 seconds, it records 30 seconds from when you hit the lights. So you see on the dash cam, you see my car stop abruptly, reverse, and then back up and turn towards them. And so it's funny as you see me go from, oh, fuck it to, fuck that to, oh, here we go.
Here we go.
And as I'm pulling up in my patrol car, you see in my dash cam, they start to separate the two guys. So when they start to separate, in my mind, I know that I'm getting a runner. One of them's running. At least one of them's running because they're separating. So I jump out of the car. Hey, come here, motherfucker. He takes off running across the street. Well, you run. If you run, I chase, right? So he runs. I chase him. I get Ziko out, like I said, and we end up. He's trying to climb a fence, get away from us, and Ziko looked like Shark Week. Ziko's hanging off of him, about 6 feet in the air. Good times.
Oh yeah, it's.
So hey, before we get into talking about a couple cases that we discussed that we want to talk about, what is the criteria for turning your dog loose on somebody like that that's running? What's the department policy? Because I think a lot of people think you just turn them loose on everything, but it's like, no. I mean, there are rules for turning a dog loose because
there's a process.
When a dog can be. A dog will inflict injury if it's going after you like that.
Absolutely. So not just department policy, which is our department policy is actually more restrictive, but law, right? State law, Graham versus Conner, the Fourth Amendment, illegal seizure, search and seizure. I can't seize a person without due cause, right? So it's based on what we call the three prongs. The nature of the offense. Is it a felony, right? Is the suspect been searched for weapons or actively resisting? And does he pose a threat to citizens and law enforcement if he's not apprehended? So in this case, I have somebody committing burglaries to a motor vehicle, which is a felony. I have somebody that actively evaded from me prior to being searched for weapons. He's refusing all commands. And if I don't apprehend him, he poses a threat of ambush to me or citizens if he's not apprehended. So he's punched that ticket, so to speak. He meets the criteria. I will deploy the dog. Now, let's say you were a shoplifter and you ran from Walmart. Am I going to deploy my dog on you? Probably not. There would have to be some other mitigating factors, right, before I would do that.
You would have had to have some other information, like they pulled a gun on somebody. Again, they'd have to commit a felony, but a simple misdemeanor.
No.
Probably not, right?
Do you have to announce that you're releasing the dog, or
if
is that a requirement?
If time and safety permit. So, like for example, if I knew you had a gun or if you shot at me, I'm not required to, right? Like that'd be foolish.
Right.
Stop! Don't shoot at me again.
Right.
I'm gonna send my dog. No, but if otherwise, I'm gonna give announcements. And in this case, I told the guy stop or I'm gonna send the dog. He chose not to stop.
Well, yeah, okay. Lesson learned. That's a valuable life lesson. And our other life lesson we always tell kids, don't we, Murph? Don't do meth. That's our other life lesson. Don't do meth. How many people, when you give when they start to think about getting froggy with you, and then they see the dog and all those teeth, and then you say, I'm going to release the dog, how often do you get compliance versus people being non-compliant?
I would say a good majority. You got your 1 or 2 percenters that are going to run anyway because that's what they do. They're career criminals. But it's like a taser almost, I would say. Crooks know that I'm, the people know that if you can shoot them or not, right? Like with my service weapon, they know, right? If they don't attempt to hurt or kill somebody or me, there's a very small chance that I'm going to shoot them, right? They know that. I can point my gun at you, but I'm bound by law not to shoot you. You follow? But the use of a taser or the use of a canine, which is a less lethal use of force, they know I'll send my dog. They know I'll tase your ass. So they know that there's a high likelihood that I'm not bluffing. And so you get compliance rather quickly because they know. And I've seen grown ass men, people who are scared of dogs, you know what I mean? Like people that you're like, damn, that's a big dude. They're scared of dogs. And for good reason, because these dogs are, they're real. When you see a dog go to work on, I've had Ziko bite a guy that was 6'5", 300 pounds. The guy starts punching him and Ziko just grins and bear it. And he didn't care. Of course,
Belgian Malinois have the crazy gene in there somewhere. It's unique.
We're doing this. Okay. And Of course,
I'm up for it, Skippy. Are you?
well, it's
Oh, look, Daddy, he wants to play.
well, the dog wasn't upset, but I got pissed. You don't touch my dog, so that was a whole nother story because that didn't end well for him either. You don't hit somebody's dog. So
Well, so let's talk now about, because you moved into an area to where you're now working with the SWAT team, and when they do tactical. Now, are you on the SWAT team or just assigned with the SWAT team?
we are assigned to special operations, so we are not technically SWAT, right? Because we're in a different bureau. But myself and another deputy with his canine are basically assigned to respond with SWAT. Anytime we get called, we are responding. But our job is canine only. We do not. I'm not clearing a building.
You don't do the entries or anything else like that.
It's.
I mean,
it's kind
the
of
dog does.
It's kind of fucked up actually, because we do the entries because I'm there with the dog, right? And the dog goes ahead of the team most times. So there I am with my pumpkin head, between the legs of 4 dudes, sending my dog down range, and I got nothing but a leash in my hand, right? I mean, like, who's stupid? That's me, So
Well, let's talk about being stupid then. This first case we want to talk about, I thought was really interesting. This is a double murder. It's a capital offense. So let's set the context for this about how you and Ziko get involved in this one. So give us the context for the call out. What things happened for you to show up on this scene?
In this instance, it was so the Gulf Coast Violent Offenders, which is like a task force that we just call it hunts the worst of the worst, right? They're looking for violent offenders, murderers, assaults, aggravated robberies, things like this.
You're not looking for parking violations and speeders.
They're not looking for people with $5 bag of marijuana. No, they're looking for hardened criminals. And this particular criminal was wanted for 2 capital murders. He had killed in 2 separate incidents. Had killed. I think in the first one he killed 2 people, which made it a capital because it was more than one person. And then the second incident is he killed somebody during the commission of a robbery. So he's a shitbag. He is a turd, but he's only like 20 years old, from Louisiana.
Now, is this all happening? Did the murders happen in Harris County?
No, they happened in Louisiana. So he had fled to Harris County where he had some family members, and he had told his family, his kin, that, basically he's not going to jail and he's going to die in a shootout, and he's going to, basically I ain't going to prison kind of stuff. And
so you're obviously working with the U.S. Marshals too on this,
yes,
right?
They're part of the Gulf Coast Violent Offenders Task Force. And so, long story short, his family's worried that he's going to get killed, because, you say you're going to kill cops. Well, they're not going to ask you a whole bunch to stop. So his family basically rats him out, and they tell us that he's going to be in this area. Long story short, his cousin or his brother or something like that, they decide they're going to go there's a Walmart in the area that I work, and he's known to carry a gun, and we know that he has a gun on him. So the plan is that we want him, his cousin, I think it's his cousin, is going to get him to leave the gun in the car, and they're going to go towards Walmart, and basically,
so the cousin is in on this at this point.
Yes, like they just don't want him to die, so they want him to be taken into custody because they don't want him to die. During the brief, I voiced my objections. I'm like, hey, this guy has already killed multiple people, and we're going to go into a public area, right? In a large parking lot. So this is not going to end well. Anyway, it is what it is, because that's where they had set it up, the family. So we end up having to roll with it. This guy, they pull up, they got eyes on him, and I'm staged off in the back, the parking lot, kind of discreetly, and kind of a funny story. So normally I get Ziko out of the car door, but in this case I opened the center partition in my car, and I just grabbed him from my car, and he exits the patrol to my door with me. And we'll get to back to that part in a second. Anyway, so the guy pulls in, they get out, and they start walk. Well, he, his spidey senses, or, he's nervous or whatever. And he's looking around, and he's real nervous. So he sees the, what we call the contact team approaching. He dead fucking runs for it. He's gone. He starts running through the parking lot. They hit him with a 40 millimeter, less lethal round, a beanbag, hits him. No effect. It did, but not at that moment, right? They tase him. He keeps running. It breaks the probes. And meanwhile, I'm like, I always make the joke, it looks like Wild Kingdom. I'm running through fucking the parking lot with Ziko on a 15-foot leash, trying to, and I'm not a small guy. I'm wide, right? So I'm running through parked cars, and I'm knocking mirrors off the cars because I'm clumsy as fuck, and I got a 72-pound dog pulling me at like 30 miles an hour, and we're running, and I'm trying to almost like on football, I'm trying to cut him off, right? I'm trying to take the line to him,
trying to get your angles right so you can catch up to him.
And so we come out the parking lot, and I'm at the max of my capability as fast as I'm going, and Ziko's just pulling me faster and faster. And I see him, but I got about 4 or 5 SWAT team members that are in hot pursuit of this guy, and I'm at a 45-degree angle, and I look and I see that Ziko. This has all happened fast, but I see Ziko's locked in on the guy. And I'm like, fuck it, no risk, no reward. I send Ziko. Go ahead,
Chris. Before you send that, did he make any movements? This suspect you're after, to indicate he had a weapon. Did you know if he had a weapon on him or not at that time?
We knew that he had a weapon when he exited, or when he was in the car. We knew he had a weapon, but the plan went to shit. So we never had any communication saying that he left it in the car. So it's unknown. We don't know.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, what I'm saying is you have to believe that this dude is armed because he's already killed 3 people.
Have to assume he's armed. He's, again, back to the 3 prongs. He's committed multiple felonies. We assumed he's armed because we know we had information telling us that he was armed, and he's failing to comply with orders to surrender. And he's already committed capital murder, so I would say that he poses a risk.
He's a huge threat to the community, absolutely.
So at this point, of course, all these things, these deployment factors, I already know these when we set up, right? Because these are criteria that I would tell you, like, hey, I can't use my dog for that if you didn't meet the criteria. But in this case, we he was already bought and paid for, as we call it. And as we're running across this thing, I send Ziko, and he passes all 4 SWAT guys and hits this guy like fucking Lawrence Taylor, just hits him. But where he hits him, I guess it knocks the guy down, and he bites him on the head, and he gets him on his left ear. And, so the dog's on his head, but he's got, a canine tooth through his ear. And it's fun. I mean, I say it's comical, but it's, when you hear this when you talk about hardened crooks, right, and these criminals, the first one's crying for mama. First one's screaming like a little girl. This guy's screaming, and you would have thought it was an 8-year-old female. He's crying, and that's the reality of what a dog does. The dog is the equalizer. The dog, I got 25-year-old SWAT guys that couldn't catch this 20-year-old crook, right? Because we're wearing 30 pounds of gear and we're doing all this, but he couldn't outrun the dog, and the dog took him down, and he's crying for mama. And so anyway, we take him off, and, they had to staple his ear back together. It was all, good fun. But I put Ziko back in my car, and we're taking care of the crook, and we're waiting for, first thing we do is make sure he's handcuffed, but check him for weapons. And then we get EMS, medical attention for him.
So was he armed?
He did not have a gun on him. It was in the car. He had left it in the car. But meanwhile, you remember I told you I got Ziko out the center partition. Well, Ziko don't shut off. Ziko doesn't know any better. Ziko's always on. So I put him in the back of my car, put him back in the back of the door, but I forgot that I'd left the partition open. And this guy's screaming and hollering, and we're doing all this stuff. And I look over, and my Tahoe is shaking left and right laterally. Like it looked like somebody's, fighting in there or something. I walk up, and I look. My center console is ripped off. Ziko took my hat, my gloves, my leash, the center console, and some other random shit. He ripped it off, and it was in the back kennel with him because he saw me dealing with the crook. He thought we were still fighting, and he wanted to play. So I'm like, then I got to call my captain. I'm like, hey, captain, I got a dog bite, but also I got a damage to county property because my dog ate my car. Full on ate it. I'm like,
dear Captain, nobody was more shocked than me when I returned to my vehicle and I found my equipment destroyed.
That was more of a surprise than you could ever imagine. But he's done it like 3 times. He ate the dashboard out of one car. I mean, the dog he's just crazy. In a good way though. He's never been handler aggressive. He's the most social dog in the world, but his prey drive, is through the roof. It's astronomical. So if he sees what he perceives as a criminal, I say a criminal, but what we would call a decoy or a willing participant, bite toy, he gets amped up and he don't shut off.
So what's his reward?
So the reward for the dogs is, whether it depends on what the game we're playing. So if we're looking for narcotics, his reward is a tug or a tennis ball, right? And that simulates prey, like small animals, squirrel, whatever. But the ultimate reward for a dog is the big human, meat stick, the bite suit, right? That guy wearing the big burlap suit, the bite suit that you scream and holler when he bites and he gets to play tug with you. So many people think the dogs are vicious, but they're not vicious. We train them that you're a willing participant and you're playing tug is all you're doing. And you're screaming and hollering as part of the training so that when he bites a real person and they're screaming and hollering, he's like, oh, we're playing. He thinks
that's why it's fun. The dog doesn't know the difference, right?
No, he's doing it because it's fun. He's not doing it out of malice or viciousness. No, that dog's playing tug of war.
Some of our listeners might think this is a little bit cruel, but think of the bad guy. He killed how many people? 2 or 3?
In this case, he killed 2 in one instance, and then another separate instance killed another person while robbing them.
So he's a 3-time murderer. And here's a guy who's said he's not going to be taken alive. He runs, which
and he was armed prior to that.
Yes, we're right. Just lucky that he left it in the car. I mean, what if he hadn't?
Right, and the dog takes him down. You know what? These are lessons that you teach your children. For every action you take, good or bad, there are consequences.
Absolutely.
And that day, the consequences for him was they finally caught up with him. He got exactly what he deserved.
And like I tell people, because I've had to go to criminal hearings, I've had to go to lawsuits, I've had to go to all these things as a supervisor, and I tell people our dogs are not vicious, and our dogs. You want to know? Here's the reality of it. You want to know who dictates whether or not the suspect gets bit? The suspect dictates whether or not he gets bit. If he complies, he does not get bit. If he listens to orders and surrenders, and it's less paperwork for us. It's cool that we caught the bad guy with the dog. Yeah, but you know what? I still caught you if you gave up, and I'm good with it. If you give up, you don't get bit. I mean, it's simple.
Well, and that's the whole thing is, it's like if you're standing there not moving your hands in the air, the dog's not going to attack because he doesn't see the behavior that he's been taught, right, to go after because you're yelling and screaming or running. So,
well, not even that, because we train our dogs to engage passive suspects as well, because you could be hiding in us, we're in a rural area a lot, even though we're Houston, there's a lot of wooded area, and you could be hiding yourself concealed in foliage or bushes and stuff like that. So our dogs will bite a passive person. They're called bite and hold dogs. If they find you, they will bite you, but that's only at my direction. So if I have to deploy the dog and allow him to apprehend you in order to do so, right? Because we run our dogs on leashes.
What's the command for bite and hold?
It's just apprehend. It's grab. It's so it depends on the dogs and wherever the dog's from. It could be Stellan. It could be Ziko is Dersh. Pocken, just depends on where the dog comes from, the language that they were taught.
So now that we have your voice recorded with the command for attack, we'll just get Ziko in the room and replay it and see if it works.
Oh,
will it work?
Ziko will respond to get that motherfucker if the scenario is right. What I mean is inflection. The dog,
he recognizes
the scenario, like I was telling you about earlier. Like, the more scenarios the dog has been exposed to, the more the dog recognizes these things. So if I'm in a scenario where the dog's keyed up and I'm yelling at you, giving you commands,
he's going to respond accordingly.
Well, yeah, with Ziko, I could give Ziko a hand signal. I won't show you the hand signal, but I could give Ziko the hand signal and he's going to go. I don't have to say shit. Or you could turn and run from me. If I let go, he's coming after you because that's what he's been trained to do.
You know what I used to do to buddies? That's why I don't have the Alexa, on my desk or anything, because these guys would put that on there. You'd be sitting there talking to them like on a virtual call like this or whatever. I go, hey, Alexa, order 10,000 copies of something else. And then you'd hear Alexa going, Alexa, confirming order 10,000 copies. And I was getting ready to say yes. And he's like, you motherfucker, stop that shit. But yeah. That's the danger in recording this stuff. But like you say, it's all situational. It's tone of voice. That all the factors have to be there.
You could say the attack command to a dog, and it wouldn't matter because you're not dad or you're not mom. It wouldn't matter. They don't care.
Right.
It's not the command. Yes, the word means something, but the command, it's not a secret. It's not some code. It's situational, and it's based on the handler, and it's based on the dog's perception of the scenario or the incident. And then the handler has to recognize that. Like I said, the command is just a reinforcer that has trained the dog to do that because it's not natural for a dog to bite a human. That's not how the predator scale works. Dogs don't bite humans, right? Typically. So in order to do that, we have to train a dog to do something that's unnatural. And you have to have a reinforcer or a marker, as I would call it, to do something like that, right? So a command. So, Stellan or Dersh or whatever your command is, that becomes the marker becomes the command to do that activity or that thing, but ultimately the dog situationally knows when it's time to do those things.
And what you're saying earlier, if people would just comply, you wouldn't have to release, you wouldn't have to sick the dog on them. But that's true in almost every situation, every encounter with the law enforcement. And the media will play up anything they can possibly play up to sensationalize what's going on out there.
Well, the
truth is
they only play half the video. Yeah.
Right. They don't show you they don't tell you the whole story. And here's the truth of the matter. If a police officer approaches you, if you're not doing anything wrong, why not comply with what he tells you? If you don't like it, then go file a complaint after him.
100%.
And do it the American way. Sue somebody if that's your thing. Go to court and become rich if that's what you think it's going to get. But a lot of these confrontations boil down to failure to comply results in the deployment of force, whether it's less than lethal, you go up the force continuum, up to lethal force. And those decisions are made more often than not by the suspects, not by the officer.
And I'll say this, regardless of the encounter, right? So like what people misconstrue is there's a lot of instances where like cops overstep their bounds. And I'm not going to say cops aren't perfect. We're not perfect. Nobody is.
Right.
But there's a lot of things where cops are wrong, let's say, or at least their probable cause is wrong, or the reason for stopping you is wrong, or whatever you may think. Okay. But the moment you escalate it, so I stopped you and I say you were speeding, but you weren't speeding, right? Let's just say you weren't speeding and you had proof somehow, right? Like I was doing 42 miles an hour in a 45 and I said, you're doing 60 but you get out of the car and you become argumentative, combative, so on and so forth, right? Whatever happens from that point, regardless of why I stopped you or regardless of why we had the encounter, you dictate how that encounter goes. If, like you said a minute ago, go back and file a complaint, do whatever, comply, because that's the only way nobody gets hurt. Because the cop didn't do it because if the cop thought he was wrong, he wouldn't do it. Does that make sense? Like every cop that does something, I mean, at least lawfully, I mean, you got bad apples, but every cop that does something believed at the time that he was doing the right thing. He stopped you.
And that's why there's reasonable suspicion versus probable cause. And to stop somebody to do a pat and frisk and what they call the Terry stop is only reasonable suspicion. I only have to reasonably suspect you of that you have or will commit a crime, right? But you could go into court later and say, "Oh, look, there wasn't enough reasonable suspicion for the stop." Great, but
dismiss the case. Yeah, okay,
dismiss the case. But at that point,
but nobody got hurt.
But if somebody escalated it from there, I stopped you, and then you go to pull out your gun. Sorry, pal, whether or not you thought I had reasonable suspicion, you had no right to pull a gun on the officer. And that lethal force situation is directly reflecting on the suspect, not the officer. Because I believed I had, we've all had cases. I thought I had PC to make arrests. You'd write stuff, you go to court, they throw it out. Okay. But that's what I believe. But it's not absolute proof. It's proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the jury trial or probable cause or reasonable suspicion. People get that all confused. They think, well, you didn't have probable cause to stop me. Sir, I don't need PC to stop you. I need reasonable suspicion. I need probable cause to arrest.
Yeah. Again, like I said, it comes down to is if you comply, right, wrong, or indifferent, if the officer's right, wrong, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just comply, because then, and I've told citizens, criminals that I've arrested, I've actually had some good conversations with people about it, that started off like what we're talking about, the bad end of it. And I'm like, do you realize that what you just did could have got you or me or both of us, killed, right? And sometimes, it does turn a light on for people, but there's just some people that are anti-law enforcement or anti-authority, and they're going to do what they're going to do. But unfortunately, your action is going to result in a consequence. Whether my stop was right or wrong, your actions are going to dictate what my reaction is going to be, and depending on what you do is going to dictate how I respond.
Absolutely.
So let's talk, because we're going to end up by talking about how you're working with canines for cops. But there was one other interesting case you brought up, and this one was a little bit different too. This one did not involve homicide, but this one was a SWAT deployment that you're on, where the guy had robbed his parents, was on all sorts of drugs. What do we say? Kids don't do meth, so he's probably on meth too. But let's set context for this next deployment. What happened? Kind of give us the time of day. How did you get the call out? What were the circumstances for this next case?
I can't remember the day of the week it was, but I was off duty. I work day shift typically, but I get an activation on my cell phone via. We have what we call it's called Activate. It's an app that SWAT sends out, for a SWAT activation. Myself, armed barricaded suspect at this location. All it says at the time is, aggravated robbery with injury. So obviously we don't know it's mom, dad, relative, or anything like that. All we know is it's ag robbery suspect. He's barricaded at this location. Has weapons. We arrive there. Patrol's already been there for a couple hours. It's nighttime. It's probably around 10, 11 o'clock at night.
So how far away are you from the scene? How long does it take you to get there?
Took me about 30 minutes to get there, just because it takes me it's kind of funny. It takes me probably 5 or 10 minutes to get me and the dog loaded up, and then we usually make pretty good time once we're in the car. But
hey, interesting. I want to ask you about that because, like I said, you're off duty. The dog may not know it's off duty, but things are at a little bit different pace. Is there any concerns, or is Ziko just one of those dogs that when it's time to be on, he's on regardless? Or do you have to prep him to get ready for this deployment? It's not like you're going out on a patrol. You're just hopping in the car. This is like, hey, you're actually going to a situation where he's going to be deployed.
Sure. Well, it's like a habit, right? So there's things that I do. Like when I get ready to go to work every day, I have a routine, and Ziko has a routine for that matter. I get up, I get dressed, I go start the car, I load it up, I turn on my computer, I open the door that the dog goes in, I go get him from his kennel, and he runs through my garage, and he loads up, he gets and jumps in the car. So he knows when he gets in the car, he's going to work. So whether it's a call out or whether it's if I'm on patrol, he's loaded in the car. He knows he's at work. When he's at home in his kennel or in the backyard, then he's not at work. He's kind of, let's call it, he's off duty mindset per se. But again, I always tell you, dogs are dogs. If somebody did something that the dog perceived as a scenario or, like that, the dog would respond as such. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you're having a barbecue in the backyard and one of your buddies decides to just play with you and put you in a headlock. The dog sees that as an attack on you, right?
Oh yeah. Or if you went running through my yard, like I always tell my kids, don't go screaming and running and hollering and they're kids, right? But don't do that shit around the dogs. Because the dogs know them and whatnot, but I'm a little obsessive compulsive. I try to be more careful, right? I don't want that chance. I'm not going to put you in that position because you're 6 or you're 10. He thinks you're playing. He's not doing it out of malice. So I'm not going to put him in that scenario. But anyway, back to your case, he knows he's going to work because we load up in the car. And then, of course, there's other factors like he hears the lights and the sirens. He gets amped up. Then when we get to the scene, obviously, I'm in my uniform, but I'm putting him in his ballistic vest and I'm loading him up and I'm putting all his shit on and I'm grabbing all my shit. The dog knows that we're there to work. He knows why we're there. He might not, perceive it's an armed barricaded suspect. The dog just knows that there's a somebody, a chew toy somebody.
There's a chew toy waiting for me somewhere.
And
that's one way to put it.
The only question is, do I get it? Right? Because a lot of times they give up or they don't give up. And SWAT scenarios, typically, if we get there and we can get them to come out, hey, better for everybody, But in this case, we get there. It's late at night. We learn that the guy lives with his parents. He's like a 35-year-old Houston gangbanger, career criminal. But he has a drug problem. And I think it was PCP as well as some meth and some other random stuff, marijuana, whatever. He's wet. Any case, he's out there and he's in the front yard, but the front yard of the house kind of, because it's a bad area, it's got like a fence surrounding the whole perimeter of the house, because people don't want their shit broke into. So it's hard for us to get to him or to close distance on him. And he's out there throwing like little chunks of cinder block rocks at patrol cars. He's got like a 16-inch machete that he's waving around. He's setting fire to shit. He just, he's acting an ass the whole time.
And that's been going on for 2 hours, you say, by the time you get there?
Yeah, 2 to 3 hours by the time. I mean, I don't know what time because patrol's going to respond to the incident and then the incident's going to
Secure the scene, and
escalate.
then it escalates, and then SWAT gets called out, and then you get called out.
Well, when SWAT gets called out, we get called out at the same time. It's instantaneous. We respond with them. But in any case, so we get there and we're setting up our command post and we're setting up the thing, and then we start relieving the patrolman on scene and try to get into a position. So then the dialogue begins. We try to get this guy to surrender. He won't surrender, and it keeps escalating. He can hear perimeter units around the fence and stuff of the house. He's sticking the machete through the fence, trying to stab them. Just doing all sorts of random violent shit.
Hey, Chris, I want to talk to you about that too, real quick too, because you said that Ziko's got a ballistic vest, which is usually good for, as they say, ballistics. And then there's issues with penetrating weapons, or edged weapons, with having vests like that. But as long as this guy is inside this fence, it goes back to what you were saying before. As long as he's staying inside that fence, even with that machete, he's really not a big threat. He's a threat, but he's not a big threat. Like if he leaves the fence and starts coming towards an officer, that's one thing, right? So he's kind of contained in the fence. He's kind of isolated, right?
Right. So containment is a big thing because obviously he's already robbed somebody. When he robbed his mother, he struck her. So it becomes aggravated robbery. So he hurt her. So he's wanted for those 2 felonies. He's on narcotics and he's failing to comply with orders, and he's still being combative with other officers. So he is a threat. So yes, he's not a big a threat because we have him contained, but we cannot leave, right? We can't, because of the propensity for violence he's shown, the crimes that he's committed, and the continuation of violence. We're not going to leave. You are coming with us before we leave, one way or the other. That's the only way this ends, is you're coming with us. You're going to jail.
How old was this guy?
Mid-30s. Grown adult, but obviously not best life choices. So anyway, it continues. We try to diffuse it several times, talking to him, try to get a dialogue with we always try to, what I call the path of least resistance. We always try to use the least amount of force as we can. So we try to get a dialogue and try to get the guy to surrender and try to rationalize with him, but it's not going anywhere. Then he keeps coming out, and like I said, he's escalating because now he's starting to set fire. Like he brings out this toolbox and he sets fire to it, and then he's throwing, I don't know what you want to call it, but like he's throwing fireballs or pieces of lit material into the street. He's throwing rocks. He's whatever. So we're like, okay, well, we need to try to take this guy into custody. But we can't close the distance because of the nature. He's got weapons. There are firearms in the house, but we don't know if he has them on him. Long story short, he comes out. He starts trying.
Hold on, before you say long story short, because we don't want short stories. I mean, as part of this is going in depth. So
yeah, we like it.
Yeah, where are and left Murph likes it short. That's what I've heard. But where are the parents at this point? Are they still in the house? Do you have a hostage situation, or are they gone?
The parents were able to get out. So it's all we know. The only known person in the house is the suspect. So he comes out, like I said, he escalates it because he hears a guy on the perimeter behind the fence that adjoins the property, and he's trying to stab him through the fence. So he's trying to cause injury to somebody else now.
Not another good life choice.
No, because now you've shown a continuation of violence, right? So like these are things that are factors for us that are going to escalate our tactics. You just not complying, we'll sit there for hours and talk to you. If we don't have to use force, we'll be happy to talk to you. But anyway, so he goes back in the house and starts barricading the house, putting the refrigerator up against the door, things like that. So we decide we're going to use chemical munitions. We deploy chemical munitions into the residence. Most people, we call it CS gas, but whatever, riot gas, whatever people want to associate that with, but chemical munitions. And we're trying to drive him to a certain side of the house, right? We want to area denial. We want to keep him out of one area of the house so that we can limit where he's at, so to make it easier for us to contain him. Because if we do have to go in, it limits the amount of the house we have to clear. So We deploy chemical munitions. They start to be they're a little bit effective. We deploy another one. We can see him through night vision going into the refrigerator, trying to wash his eyes out, with drinking milk, getting a beer, doing whatever he's doing.
Well, real quick too, Chris, you were saying that too. CS is usually an irritant. It's not like the oleoresin capsicum, the OC, that, when they would, that stuff is, I got sprayed with that when they were doing training. That shit is brutal. But CS is more like, gives you a runny nose, clears out your sinuses. It might bother your ears, but people can fight through that. But the reason I brought that up is I wanted to make a point is that with this guy, it's like your other guy. Fight or flight syndrome kicks in for like the first guy. The taser, the beanbag, stuff like that doesn't, it bothers them, but they work through it, they push through it. But somebody with PCP, especially, we've all fought somebody who's on PCP. You fought people who are whacked out on dope. They don't have the same pain threshold and don't think of pain. They don't go through pain the same way we go through it as unaffected adults. Yeah,
because I've seen people on PCP take dog bites, and I had one guy bite my dog back, my old dog Duke. He grabbed the dog by the vest, pulled him to him, and bit him back. And I was kind of impressed, but then at the same time I was irritated, because he bit my dog. So that's a different story, though.
Well, the headlines say it's not interesting to say dog bites man. What's the real interesting headline is man bites dog, and I think we've got our man bites dog headline.
It was. I was like, all right, good with it, But in any case, so this guy. He keeps coming back.
Now tell me, Chris, did you sign this guy up for the canine program then? Did you say, hey, look, we've got an opening for you?
Oh, no, we did not. We did not sign this guy up.
Oh, darn.
No, he was not welcome. It's funny, though, is, you talk about people. This guy had been telling you, he's making threats. He's like, I'll break that dog's neck, to me, because we're on the perimeter. I'll break that dog's neck. You send that dog. I'll break that dog's neck. I'll kill that dog, blah, 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 blah. He's saying all these things. I'll kill you motherfuckers. Anyway, so he's going back in, and we drive him out of the house with the CS gas. So he comes back out into this little, I don't know what you want to call it. Like I said, it's a fence. It's all cement, like patio type thing, but it's fenced in. It's hard to explain. But we can't get to him. There's only one path that you get to him. It's up the driveway, but it's exposed. He can see you coming. So an opportunity presents itself. He comes out, and he's lighting fires and doing all this stuff, but he gets distracted again by the perimeter guy that's on that fence. So he goes over there and he's jacking with him, trying to stab him and doing all this shit. Well, another guy they tase him. So they tase him, but it works. It's only partially effective because he falls back, and as he falls back, it breaks the probes. So when it breaks the probes, he's no longer under the power of the taser. So now he's back to being batshit crazy again. And now we're already moving. I got a team of like 5 guys and me and the dog, and we're moving up, 2 on each side of me basically, and I'm in the middle, and it's a react team, and we're trying to close distance so we can, basically put hands on this guy, take him into custody. They shoot him with a 40 millimeter, less lethal marker round, hits him. It's not a completely effective. Like I said, he's under the influence of stuff. So you can see it hit him and affect him, but he doesn't give up. The pain is not enough for him to give up. He's reacting different.
Chris, go into a little bit of detail of what that is. You said that 40 millimeter round. What is it? How is it shot out? What's it designed to do?
Well, there's different types of munitions. You have a beanbag round, which looks like a little beanbag, and that's filled with usually I can't tell you the weight, but like let's say an ounce of plastic pellets inside of a burlap bag that hits. So, basically it doesn't penetrate, but it causes pain compliant. That's a beanbag.
It's like a huge fist hitting you in the chest with a fist or something.
Yes. And then we also have marker rounds, which are like, they're foam, they're condensed, dense foam. But they have, CS gas or OC spray, olorium capsicum in them, so that then when they hit you, they disperse the chemical munition. So it's kind of you get the pain compliance, but you also get the irritant. So they hit him with that, which was a 40 millimeter, which is the size of the munition.
And what do you fire those things out of? Is that shotgun fire? Do they have their own special weapon to deploy them?
Well, there's different types, but so for example, they have shotgun based ones, but they also have what the 40 millimeter one is like. Much people in the military would see a grenade launcher. Mm-hmm. The 40 millimeter,
like a drum on there. And
it used to be called a Sage gun or a multi-launcher, and basically it's just the caliber of the munition. So it looks like that big canister drum thing. It's called a multi-launcher, and it shoots, we can load it with various types of munitions, but they struck him with that. It was an impact, wasn't effective, but we're already committed. We're already rolling. We go up, he's his back's up against the wall of his house, and the machete is at his feet. And as the team moves up, they try to go hands on. And I'm, I typically I'm like, okay, if there's 4 guys, I'm not going to go, I'm not going to release a dog at that point because, we can typically overpower, 4 guys on any one person, excuse me, is usually enough. Right. But they're not getting compliance. So there's about a 2-second delay, and you can see it's actually on my body camera. It's actually a pretty good video. I'm holding the dog back, and I see him. They're trying to go hands on, and he's fighting him, and he reaches down for the machete. When he reaches down for the machete, I just send the dog between the team members, and he hits him on grabs him on like the right leg or the right calf. And a little cynical for me, but this is the guy that says he's going to kill my dog and break his back. When Ziko bites him, this guy that's on PCP, he just took a taser, he just took the munition round and all that stuff. When Ziko bites him, his eyes roll back in his head and he passes out. And then they handcuff him, and then we took him out, and that was the end of the scenario.
So, wow. So let's back up for a second. So you're down there looking at guys' crotch again, like you said. You're looking between people's legs, aren't you? You perv. Okay,
that's me.
Chris the perv. But as you're down there, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like I said, there's probably gas out there, all this stuff. How clearly are you able to see him reaching down for that machete? I mean, you got a good line of sight to him?
Well, so it's funny, is like you say. So I am, in this instance, I'm wearing a gas mask, right? So it goes kind of back to the point we were talking about the commands with the dog. Ziko can't hear me saying "dersh."
Yeah, all he would hear would be. Brr, brr, brr.
Yeah, exactly. But Ziko knows the situational. What he sees the guy, and we've trained him with the team to be pack mentality. So the guys on the team are not threats; they're part of his pack. If you're downrange, shame on you. But if you're part of the pack, you're good. So when I come up, because in this case, I'm not sending them between their legs because they're on my left side and my right side. They're trying to get control of his, of his extremities, right? But I'm squatted because I'm low with the dog. So, and I can see him because he's, you got all this chaos going on above you, so to speak, at my head and shoulder level. But I can see clearly because I'm low, and I can see him reach forward and lean forward and go to grab that machete. And when he does that, I make the conscious decision, like, normally they'll call for the dog to come up if they want to use the dog for a search, or if they want to use the dog for force. But in this case, I had to make the conscious decision to utilize the force. I made the decision because I saw that they weren't getting control. This guy's reaching for a weapon. He's been non-compliant. And based on the factors that he's done, I determined that if I use the dog, if he grabs that knife, they're going to shoot his ass. So if I use the dog, I can deter him from grabbing the knife, and we just avoided a lethal encounter.
You bring up a very good point, and that's what I wanted to emphasize. Had you not been there with the dog, if this had just been a straight SWAT operation,
he would have got shot.
There's probably a chance he would have been shot, right?
100%. Well, this guy, I'll tell you the story. 3 months later, of course, we're a little bit liberal down here now in the Houston area, and this guy's out on bond. 3 months later, he shoots a cop, and we end up catching him again. He shot a cop in the same neighborhood 3 months later, while he was out on bond for this.
Oh my! What happened to the cop?
Oh, damn.
He just got shot in the hand. He returned to work. He's okay. But this guy, it's horrible. He ambushes him. He comes around the corner of a store to try to make contact with the guy because they know who he is, because he's done this shit his whole adult life. They go around to make contact. He turns and fires on the deputy and just starts unloading, and he hits the deputy. The deputy stops, drops, and rolls, basically. This guy, you can see on the store camera video, he's walking up to execute the cop. He's, you know what I mean? He's closing distance and he's going to put it on him. And the cop just happens to roll out of the frame, and either his gun jammed or something happened, but he turns and then he runs. But he was turning to close distance and execute that cop. And this is the guy that we just had a SWAT standoff with I just told you, 3 months prior. And he's out on bond. Yeah.
How did he make it out on bond? Because I'm assuming from the area of town that you're talking about, hopefully his bond was high enough. But it's like, was this just a cash bail thing? They let him out, or what happened?
We're in the midst of bond reform down here. So you got murderers and capital murderers out on $100 bonds.
Outrageous.
Well, that's
outrageous.
That's a loss for words. But here's the thing. Here's a guy who clearly was about to attack law enforcement. Had a machete out, which could have. I mean, look. You might have all that gear on as a SWAT guy, right? But somebody hits you in your neck with that, or gets you through your neck, hits a carotid or stuff, you're dead. I mean, yeah, some femoral artery. Yeah, it's people don't realize you're dead on something like that.
Absolutely.
And this guy is out on bond. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Hey, quick question for Chris. Now, so you're there with a gas mask on. You guys have deployed CS, OC, tear gas, whatever. Does that gas affect the dog?
No, the CS gas and some of the other chemical munitions do not. I've cleared houses where my gas mask was ineffective, and the dog doesn't care. Now the OC spray, depending on the intensity or the makeup of it, how potent it is, that can be an irritant to the dog because it affects mucous membranes. But not to the dogs, not to the degree you or another human would, you or I would affect it. As far as the munitions we use, Ziko works without a care.
That's
good for him.
So let's talk a little bit too about how Ziko. Tell us about the vest that he wears. I mean, how much extra weight does that add to Ziko, and how does that? I mean, obviously there will be some impairment to his mobility, but what's the effect of having that vest?
Well, so here, obviously, this is a kind of a topic that I've had to deal with several times, in my position. Based in Houston, obviously, the heat and the humidity, we don't like to run the dogs in these ballistic, also, they're stab resistant vests also. But depending on the type of incident will dictate whether or not I put the dog in the vest. Now, if I'm doing a search in a wooded area, they weigh about probably 5 pounds, for a dog, but that's, it'd be like me and you wearing 40 pounds, 30 pounds.
Which I could stand to lose, I think.
Well, yeah, but it's also, in this humidity, the dogs can't sweat like we can. So
that's the key thing I was getting at right there too, because when we talked to Randy Tooman, that's what he said. His first dog died on him because of out in the heat and stuff. He didn't realize the signs of that. And that's a very real thing, is dogs will continue to work where we will stop and say, look, dude, I've had enough. Dogs will continue to work.
Dogs will work until they fall over. It's crazy, their drive. But in any case, so I have in my policy that I created, I have situational, right? So like if we know the guy's armed and we know he's barricaded, then they shall wear a ballistic puncture resistant vest. If it's an area search or a wooded area or a track, barring any mitigating or circumstances where we know he was shooting at cops or something like that, then they're not required to wear a ballistic vest. But all of my dogs are issued ballistic punctured vest. Our sheriff has actually been very proactive in allowing, because they're not cheap.
They're custom. They have to be custom. These are custom designed. People don't really, you make vests for like guys like us or ladies. Ladies, actually, that's why for a long time it was difficult to get vests for women, because they weren't designed for women's, physique to take into account the breasts and the curve. That you have to make some special vests for that to be comfortable for them. So that up the price a little bit. But dogs, man, that is some custom, basically real custom design, because some dogs are bigger, broader. Some dogs are a little bit thinner.
And so it's it's vests have come a long way. Initially, they were very one size fit all, and they look like a rifle case,
like taping a telephone book on your back and front.
And they were ridiculous. They were not practical. But the progress we've made with them, like we use not a plug or anything, but we use this place called Recon Canine, and they came from an aeronautical background, so they use all the aeronautical aluminum, all the fasteners and stuff like that. But they've made very extremely lightweight vests that are still ballistically comparable to the old heavy stuff, but they're form fitting. Like the new ones that we just ordered for the dogs that deploy with SWAT, it's a vest that bolts onto the dog, but it's got magnetic ballistic panels. So like I can be carrying the panels on me, and then if it turns in, so the dog's wearing the tracking vest, but then it turns to shit and I got to put ballistic on him for a barricade, I just slap those on him. So he's not carrying the weight the whole time.
Hey, quick question on the vest too, because with officers and law enforcement officers, the National Institutes of Justice have their certification like level 2, level 3, level 3A, 3A plus, level 4. Do they have the same NIJ levels for dog vests?
They do. So the panels are rated through NIJ regardless, whether it's a person or a dog or whatever, and ours are level 3A for the dogs. So that stops up to, I think, 762 or 556?
Yeah, 762, I think. Well, yeah, it could be too. But the other thing too is it stops a lot of the big rounds too, like 40, 45.
44 Magnum, yeah.
Yeah, because those are the ones that hurt.
How much would one of those vests cost typically?
The ones that we ordered were around $3,500 each for the SWAT dogs.
Whoa!
Yeah. Now you can get your average vest for about $1,500, but if you start getting specialized, just like anything specialty, the price goes up.
Yeah,
Right.
I ordered some
Whoa.
body armor here a couple years ago and stuff. I mean, so I've got the level 4 plates, rifle plates for the front back. And but like you say, there are new technologies out there. There was somebody, I can't remember if it was MIT or something, maybe a California one, but they got to the point. There are some things with carbon nanofibers, nanocarbon stuff, where it
Hmm.
gets so thin is that you could actually put something as bad as I don't know, half an inch thick or something, and that it will absorb the energy of these rounds, and
Yeah.
it's just ridiculous. But again,
It's
the new
crazy. Yeah.
technology. So
It's like
hey,
that alligator skin or whatever they call it.
Well, back in the day, yeah, they
Dinosaur
called it
skin.
dragon skin.
dragon skin,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, Murph, you're thinking alligator skin. You're thinking Big Al in your backyard, right? He's going to be your protective vest here pretty soon, huh?
Hey, I remember back in the 1970s as a uniform cop in West Virginia, I bought my first second chance vest for $199. Now you see how much it costs.
I
Holy
had
cow.
my first vest, I remember, was a company called American Body Armor, but it felt like I was wearing a freaking armadillo shell. There was no flexibility.
Well, I think
You
it
put
actually.
on.
I think the logo was an armadillo for ABA. It was.
You put that thing on, man, you couldn't move. You try and bend forward. You looked like you were doing the robot dance, in discos or something. There was no flexibility to where now these things are so flexible. But I'll tell you what, the other thing too is you're with, I know you'll be with me on this, tell me I'm right here, Chris. You can tell when somebody hasn't washed their carrier in a while where that thing gets hot and sweaty.
Oh, you can tell
and then they put it on.
You can tell yourself. I mean, like you should be the first to know. It's funny you say that. I got a new dog that I'm training up, and we were out in the sun all day, and I'd probably been wearing the same outer carrier for about 3 days, and friend comes up to me that I hadn't seen in a long time, goes, give me a high. I said, oh, I said, warning, I stink. Like I could already smell myself. I'm like, hey, bro, back up. But yeah, they get ripe.
That's like wearing ice hockey gear, man. You sweat your butt off every time you go on the rink, and then you stick it out in the yard and let it air out.
Or if you had sons who did wrestling.
Yeah. No, we're fortunate. So we'll take our vest to the SWAT guys. They've got it's a ion, I don't know what you want to call it, an ion chamber. And basically it sanitizes the vest for us, kills all the bacteria using ultraviolet light. So you don't have to wash them, but it'll kill it's a sanitizing machine.
Wow.
So it works pretty
Kills
good.
the stink. That's the biggest thing. I don't care about germs, but I don't want to be smelling like that when I hop into the car.
Oh man, that's people always laugh, and the first thing you got to realize about being a canine guy is you become nose deaf, because like people get in your car and like, man, that smells like shit in here. You stink. Like I'm like, what? I cleaned it yesterday. What do you mean?
I don't smell anything.
Yeah. What do you mean?
That's funny.
Hey, well, let's talk a little bit about your work now, in your role now, and I want to talk about what you're doing with Canines for Cops. So in your role now, you're sergeant. What does that mean to be in charge of all the canines? What are you responsible for? How many canines have you got working now?
We have 25 canines in the sheriff's office, and I'm the day shift admin sergeant and lead trainer. So I'm responsible for, day-to-day operations of my squad, which is 12 handler teams. But also I oversee all the annual training and make sure that everybody's training is done, make sure that the dogs all pass certification, make sure the dogs are up to speed, make sure that, all the things that the dogs are ready to roll. I'm also involved with all the training, the day in, day out stuff, but I get to make the decisions on status of dogs, health wise, or operational status, if they're not cutting it, or if their health is deteriorating, or if they're just old, we need to retire them. Do a lot of we're a regional training facility. I've tried real hard in my tenure to grow, and with the help of Canines for Cops, we've grown our status. We're the regional training provider for the greater South Texas area. People come to us for class. They come for us for maintenance training. I'm a certifying official with the NNDDA. So I certify dogs, to make sure they meet the standard. Every dog has to carry a certification to be a law enforcement canine. And then of course I coordinate with Christy, putting on. So my role with Christy and Canines for Cops is I help vet agencies that are applying for dogs, make sure that they have the resources, because we can give anybody a dog, right? And Christy that's her heart. She would give anybody a dog.
Support But if you can't support a dog, there's no sense in giving you a dog.
Right. I can't give you a dog if you don't have the purchase, if you don't have the money for vet care, if you don't have dog food taken care of, if you don't have a vehicle outfitted with the safety features for the dog. I have to make sure that all these agencies that Christy wants to give dogs to meet the criteria and are willing to support the canine, because not just the equipment and logistics, but people don't realize that you're required to give 16 hours a month of training to these dogs just for maintenance. That doesn't count the handler time. That doesn't count all the extra stuff that goes into it. And a lot of people, you know,
they're not a family pet. You just don't put a leash on them and walk them around. These are working dogs, and it's like your marksman skills. It's like driving or training, whatever. If you don't train, you lose the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and a lot of people, you know, the eyes are bigger than their stomach, right? Everybody wants a canine program. You know, everybody wants the T-shirt. But sometimes you're like, well, you know.
Nobody wants to do the work it takes to get there. Everybody wants the benefit, right?
Well, do I have to send him for 12 weeks of class? Well, yeah. Yes, you do. You know, like, yeah. Why are we having this conversation? You know,
well, can I send him 1 week a year for 12 years? Will that be okay?
Exactly. And you'd be surprised. It's funny only because it's true. Like, people don't. And
I say it because I've heard it before. They want to figure out, well, look, you can't get 9 women together who are 1 month pregnant and say, I've got a full-term baby. It just doesn't work that way, right? You got to be there for the 9 months with that. You got to be there for the 12 weeks with the dog.
And it's like we talked about, that even the 12 weeks, that is the basic level of proficiency, right? You're still not like what I would call it takes, I would say, 2 years before you're, at least with me, that I trust you as a dog team. You know what I mean? Like 3 months of training, that's the tip of the iceberg. And then you have people that are like, well, can't we just do 4 weeks? Well, no, you can't, because the dog needs to see as much. Well, not just the dog, but the handler, the team needs to be exposed to as many potential scenarios as possible in order to become proficient and effective. The more they see, the more likely they are to succeed. The less they see and the less successful encounters they have, the more likely you are to have a failure.
Well, yeah. How many lawsuits are you willing to take on because you sent your guy to 4 weeks of training as opposed to 12 weeks of training? You know, it's a reduction in risk. Hey, quick question though. Out of all of your dogs you have in Harris County now, how many have come courtesy of Canine for Cops?
Jesus. I can't tell you the exact number, but I know Christy's given us in excess of 30 dogs over the years, probably more than that.
Hey, just so people understand, put a value on that. What's the value of getting 30 dogs provided, and not the training and everything, but just the value of having 30 dogs provided you? How much has that saved the taxpayers of Harris County?
It's probably more than that, because, you know, some dogs are more than others, but on average, a dog's about $15,000. So you figure that's about $500,000, $450 right there, conservatively, just in dogs.
Yeah, and she said she sent us a number. You guys are getting close to 40 dogs that she's gifted over to.
I mean, every dog,
fantastic.
Every dog that is currently in service with the sheriff's office, my agency, has been gifted by Canines for Cops. My agency has not bought a dog, okay, because of Christy's generosity, has not bought a dog since 2010.
Oh my God!
Outstanding.
That's just freaking great.
And
you know, we haven't had the opportunity to meet Christy yet, but you love this lady already. You know what?
Yeah, no,
for what she's doing for law enforcement.
She's
got more drive than a Belgian Malinois wall, right?
She does not stop. That is for sure. She's allowed us to, like, there's a lot of things that, you know, career wise, obviously I like to give back, because a lot of the things that I would say like make me good at what I do were because of exposure and classes and people and the contacts that I've met through her in the canine community. And a lot of the things that are I don't know what you want to call it, but a lot of the philosophies that I use in training dogs is a conglomerate of all the people and the contacts that I've been exposed to. And, you know, I'm not proud. I'll steal your shit, you know, like, you know, if it works, I'm taking it. And
you learn from everybody.
And that's kind of the way I look at it, is I've taken bits and pieces of everything I like, and then I throw away the shit that I don't like and just save it in case I need it. But then the stuff that I like, and I make it my own. And, you know, and for our part at the sheriff's office, or my part, is because Christy in the organization gives us so many dogs and so much training, and she's never said no to me. You know what I mean? Like, I've always laughed. He's like, baby, yeah, okay, baby. Yeah, you can have it. Anything that I can do for them, I'm going to do. And usually what that means is when I can do it, I usually try to have 2 to 3 classes a year. And those are 3-month classes. But any Canines for Cops dog that wants to come to my class comes for free. So the agency that's, obviously they're asking for a dog because they can't afford it, right? So can they really afford to spend $4,500 on a training class either? So I reciprocate to Canines for Cops because we coordinate the basic training class, and we allow anybody. I've had people come from South Carolina and come to our class. We put the class on for free, and anybody that's willing to come or wants to come, more than welcome.
Well, you said that you've never told her no, or
I've tried. It doesn't
she's
work.
never told you no. Have you ever told her no?
I have. I tell her, usually it's because she wants to do more. And Christy is what I call the queen of. She looks at things from like 15,000 feet, right? Whereas I look at things from 1,000 feet. I'm looking at operational. Christy's looking at this big scheme, and she's always got these big, great ideas. And some of the time, you have to tell her no because, like, hey, Christy, there's pitfalls, or we can't do it this way. Or you have to be I call it the voice of reason. And I try to tell her, like, hey, we can't do it this way. Well, that doesn't deter her. She just finds
another way to do it.
She finds a better way to do it. But the no part for me would be is like only a voice of concern. Because you'll learn with Christy, if she wants to do something, she's going to do it. With or without you, it's going to be done.
It's going to get done. Hey, quick question too, because you mentioned that you vet a lot of the people. Of all the agencies who apply to get a dog from Canine for Cops, what percentage end up getting a dog? How many do you have to turn down simply because they can't meet the requirements?
I can say this: we've never turned down an agency like with what I would call a hard no. Ultimately, we probably have 100 applications that are always in queue. I mean, it's just, we get more than we get more applications than we can give dogs physically annually, right? There have been several occasions where people, like I said, their eyes are bigger than their stomach. They typically what happens is somebody wants a dual purpose. They want a bite dog, but they're like a 4 or 5 man department. And they've never had a canine unit. They don't have a canine policy. They don't have a program set up. They have nothing established, but they want a bite dog, which is inherently more liability than a narcotics dog. You follow? So a couple times I've had to say, hey, you guys don't have the infrastructure to support a patrol canine or an apprehension canine yet. We will gladly give you a single purpose narcotics or a tracking canine, but until you can demonstrate, 1 to 2 years of successful canine use, right, or existence, before we would give them a dog that's used for force. So it's just
and also to demonstrate that their jurisdiction's willing to commit the funds to keep that going.
Exactly. Like I said, that's one thing. Christy doesn't want to say no to anybody. And
so it's more not no. It's just not right now. If you want to get one, here's what you have to do.
Yep. Or hey. If we didn't get to you last year because, this agency needed a dog first, you're still on the list. But every year we say, hey, if you're still interested, you just renew your application. So you just update it for the new fiscal year so that we know you're still interested, because eventually you will, from Canines for Cops, eventually you will get a dog.
Right. As long as you can meet that, like say, hit that criteria. Because, I think, that's the part I love about it, is that you're just not it's not just about giving dogs away. It's about, this is a tool for law enforcement. And I would no more want to give you a weapon that you said, well, I'm not going to clean my weapon. I'm never going to oil it. I'm never going to go to the range. Then why am I giving you a weapon? Well, why am I giving you a dog if you don't agree to clean and oil it, and take care of it on a regular basis?
It's a tool, yes, but it's also a living thing. And I'm not, what kind of bastard would give somebody a dog that's, that I know you're not going to take care of it or you treat it right. You know what I mean? There's a million things, not just, are you going to deploy it and use it right? Are you going to mistreat it? You know what I mean? Is it going to be cared for properly? These are things that nobody wants to see dogs, nobody wants to see a dog hurt or mistreated, or misused for that matter. So that's where, for us, it's very important that we vet these people, these agencies, like, hey, look, we want to give you this tool, but we need to make sure that it's a good fit for you and for the animal. And the citizens in your population too. We don't want to give somebody a dog that's going to be misused either. Like, you don't have any policy on how to use it, and you're just, like I gave you the analogy,
and it's running up and down the street biting everybody. Well, that's not going to go well, pal.
The shoplifter from Walmart. I mean, and you're sending we don't want people to have dogs like that, at least not from us, right? That's what we're here for.
That's going to kill your budget. I want to read one thing that how Christy described you to us.
Oh, Lord.
That you said on her board, you are her right-hand man at Canines for Cops. and that you've also overseen the 140,000 hours plus of training to provide to all the LEOs, the law enforcement officers that are getting these dogs. So you are extremely highly thought of there, brother.
Oh
Hoorah,
no,
Marine.
thank you.
Absolutely.
No, she is always like she taking me under her wing, you know. So obviously, you're only as good as the support you have, and so she's allowed me to. Basically, I'm OCD by nature, but she's allowed me to be OCD, and you know, I'll never say no. I can't do that. So she's allowed me to take on things and do things, and like I said, I want to give back, and I want to make sure that these. You know, I can't afford to give people dogs like Canines for Cops can, but I can make sure that the dogs that they get the proper training and the handlers get the training so that they're set up for success when they go to work. I can't stand to see, you know, in my profession, I've seen, like I said, we call them the T-shirt wearers. You know, everybody has them. You know, where they got the rubber stamp and they hey, I'm canine, or hey, I'm SWAT, or hey, I'm whatever, right? I'm high speed, low drag. But do they do the work? Is the dog proficient? And I've seen, unfortunately, a dog that I've seen that was great. You know, ready to rock and roll a year, and then a year later you see it, and you could tell that dog been sitting on the couch eating potato chips because it's fat, it's out of shape, and that, you know, you can tell, right, if people put work in.
Murph, has he been
Right.
looking in on your couch?
Hey, I was doing that last night watching TV. I'll be the first to admit.
Hey, but you're retired
Wavy
now.
Lays, brother. We're Wavy Lays. We're good friends.
Wavy Lays, yeah. So I'm still out humping it. I'm hitting the bike, you know, the Peloton, going outside riding. So I got to keep this figure, you know, because according to Sherry, one of her girlfriends thinks I have a sexy voice.
Yeah, wait till she gets to know you.
Yeah, so that's everybody. I tell everybody, go, hey, glad to meet you. Yeah, wait till you get to know me. That may change. Hey, Chris, let's end up with this. Some point you're going to have to leave the sheriff's office. What's your dream job when you leave the sheriff's office?
You know, I honestly hadn't thought of it, but I kind of envisioned still playing with dogs in some form or fashion. You know, I've said that canine is the best kept secret in law enforcement. It keeps people young because I get to, I mean, you know, despite politics, despite the way the things are sometimes with law enforcement, I get to go to work and play with dogs. So no matter how you slice it, you know, that it keeps it fresh, and it's a double-edged sword. You know, like for example, you know, I had Duke retire and ultimately pass away, and now, you know, Ziko, who was the young stud, is now 9. And he's looking at me crazy when I brought this new dog Rex. He looked at me like traitor, you know, like, what are you doing? But so it's a double-edged sword because you hate to see, you know, the dogs get older faster than us, you know, and ultimately leave before us. But it's a new, because every time I get a new dog, it's like a jump start. It's a refresher. It's a new spark, because now I've got a whole new set of problems and a whole new set of communication that I got to work out with this new dog that doesn't know. You know, you got to build trust. So I've had this dog for about 3 days, and I'm out here hand feeding him in my backyard every day. You know, it's always a new process. So it keeps you, like I said, it keeps it fun. It keeps it interesting because there's no two dogs are the same, and so you get to learn. You know, you can't communicate with them other than, you know, I can't talk to them and reason with them. So it's through correction, or through positive reinforcement, or through reward based. And when you make that connection, to me, that's the most exciting part. Is you like, if people saw what Ziko was a great dog when I got him, but if you saw the difference between when Ziko was 2 to when Ziko was 6, when I first started doing a lot of stuff with him, the difference, right? And you know, that's the cool part to me, is you see what you can put into a dog. It amazes me.
You know, I like to say that just because we retire doesn't mean that our oath's expired. We all took an oath to defend the Constitution and our fellow man. And I predict right now that, you know, when your time does come to pull the pin, and you know, we say go to pasture, but that's not what you do. You're going to continue to do what you've been doing all along, and that's still serving the public.
Well,
you know, we are public servants, and that's a badge of honor in my book.
I see a role in Canine for Cops. I see you. I see you really expanding that out, because she's got a lot of good people that's helping her out. But you know what? But a lot of these folks are still active duty, like you, like Randy, like Ted, right? So at some point,
Yeah, we've talked about that, and you know, obviously, I don't like to count on anything because, time and things change. But that is definitely something that's in the back of my head of something. And I still probably got young kids, so I probably got another 10 years to go. Realistically, unless something, I always tell people I'd be a janitor if the money was right, but
no, you wouldn't, because janitors don't have canines, and you're not, you wouldn't be a janitor because you didn't want to work in the jail either. So that's the version of being a janitor in law enforcement.
That's true. That's true. However, as we get older too,
they're important jobs. Don't get me wrong. I don't want hate mail. They're important jobs, but it's routine, right? It's you want something that is not routine, something that when you wake up the next morning, you go, all right, Ziko, what are we going to get into today?
Well, it's like, it's that's the best part. Like I said, I'm fortunate. Just by luck and interaction, I guess our paths crossed. And so, Canines for Cops and Christy Schiller, the amount of exposure, number one, but also the amount of support given, and like it's easy to be successful when you have support. Those of us that are not successful or have lack of support, it just makes it that much more difficult. And the amount of support that Canines for Cops has given, not just my agency, but hundreds of agencies, it's humbling because, like I said, she's never told me no. When I came to her, and not just for my department, but I'm talking about, like, I've had agencies that, like, they call and, because people, right? Like, you've been around people and you have connections through work and stuff. And somebody calls you and they said, hey, my dog just, my dog's dying of cancer. I can call literally because of the reputation or the rapport I have with Christy. I've been able to say, hey, look, this is a case by case deal. Can we, these people are in dire need. They use the dog. They have these needs, blah, 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 blah. And usually if I tell her a scenario or a story and it makes sense to her, she's always made it happen, right? And not just for me, but think about the other agencies that, like, they only had 2 dogs in their agency and one of them goes down. Well, you just cut their workforce in half. And she's like, hey, go make it happen. Like, and not like, hey, we'll get to it, but like, no, she's the type of person. No, yeah, baby, call them, tell them to go over here to this kennel and pick a dog tomorrow. Like, like that type of shit. That's volumes of what, like, to have that relief, like I've been there when I didn't know I was getting another dog. I'm like, man, I'm gonna be pulling Duke around. I made the joke, I'm gonna put him on caster wheels and stuff him when he dies because I'm gonna be pulling this dead dog around because we can't afford one.
Put him in my red flyer wagon and take him everywhere I go.
And when somebody says, when somebody is the answer to your prayers, or like they give you the solution to your problem, that weight that's lifted off, because the handlers take it on themselves. Like, it's the agency's responsibility for the dog, but the handlers bear that because that's their dog or their partner, and they want a dog and they want to do this passion. And to have somebody come in and say, I got you, go get your dog. I mean, that, like I said, that brought me to tears. Like when I got Ziko, I grown ass man crying, so that relief, that sense of being taken care of, that kind of support, that's rare, so,
Absolutely.
That's why I do anything I can for them, because I've been on that side.
Well, you know what? Let me just say here. I think we're getting ready to close out here, but it's been a true honor to have you on here, Chris. Thank you for taking the time. We had to reschedule for some equipment issues, and you have been more than easy to work with. I know you're busier than shit. You got a lot going on. You got a family. You got your dog. You got your career. You got Canines for Cops. So God bless you for everything you do, but also God bless you for being partnered up with Christy Schiller, Canines for Cops, Canines for Kids. Folks, if you don't know what that is, just Google it. Take a look at it, see if it's something you want to support. This lady has it's just unbelievable. I know she got, on Steve Harvey's show, she got one of Harvey's Heroes Awards. We saw the YouTube video for that. That's just simply not enough. Saying thank you is not enough. Christy, you're fantastic. Morgan, I just hope we get the opportunity to meet you in person someday. And Chris, brother, Godspeed. God keep you safe out there. You and everybody, you're doing the Lord's work, brother. And that's just I can't tell you how proud we are to have you on the show today.
No, I appreciate y'all having me.
People can't see this, but this is me saluting you, Marine, first of all, for serving our country, serving your community. Oh, come on, get that salute up there. Get that thumb. Come on, please. Yeah, I was going to say, I farted. That's right, we're on cameras.
But see, also, I'm not supposed to do it without a cover on. So that's the Marine Corps. You can't do it without a cover.
Got to have a cover
Well,
on.
yeah.
Well, you got a headset on, so that's technically a cover. There you go.
And
All right, sir.
I frequently salute Morgan, and you can figure out what that's all
Yeah,
about. So
it's usually his IQ or number of friends he has left after me. So,
but it's all done with love.
it's all done with love. Hey, man, no, so Chris, seriously, man, it's an honor. And the thing is, for me, it's the passion you have for doing this. This is not just a routine job. Nobody gets into this, number one, for the paycheck. Nobody gets into this because they just want to have a boring job. But for you to continue to do this, serve your community, serve but the big thing, serving the other agencies like you do, making sure other communities other than Harris County get this, get these dogs, get these people that are trained to be able to use the dogs effectively. Dude, you're making a huge impact. And by the way, a couple of your dogs have ended up in Kansas, which is my original stomping grounds, Parsons, Kansas. So I know the places. So I appreciate the fact that you're helping do your job, keeping all of America safe, not just your little patch of heaven down there in Texas, where it's very humid and it sucks in the summer. So.
Yeah, it definitely does that.
All right. Well, everybody, we're going to bring this to a close. Chris, once again, thank you, buddy. Everybody, stay tuned for the debrief. And I told you, Chris saved that guy's life. Had he not let the dog loose to take him out before he raised that machete, that SWAT team was going to ventilate him.
Absolutely.
And kill him. And so, you make these split decisions. People, here's the thing, and this is one thing, again, there's not political statement. It's just more of an operational, the way you have to think. Cops have to make decisions in split seconds that other people get the luxury of hours, days, and months to go review. So try putting yourself into a position to where you have to make a split-second decision to turn that dog loose because you see he's reaching for a machete. Had Chris not been there with that dog, and the guy picked up the machete, he was a threat to the officers. They would have shot and killed him.
Absolutely. And what's also amazing is that the dog, with all the SWAT guys right there, knew who to go after. He knew to go after that bad guy. It's just, this is phenomenal. It's the dedication of these animals, that they will protect their handler at the cost of their own life many times. You got to love them. You just got to love them. It's fantastic.
Well, and then going after that capital murder suspect, this guy had killed 3 people already, and they working with the family, which is good. Look, the family didn't want him to get shot. They knew he had done wrong. They wanted to bring him in. They wanted to bring him in safely. And as you found out in the episode, they were able to bring him down safely. Now, the guy had a couple bite marks, but sucks to be you, pal.
Yeah, you could have given up.
Yeah, I should have given up. And so when Chris was saying good boy, he wasn't talking about the guy giving himself up. He was talking about Ziko, and his dog. Good boy.
Doing his job. Doing his job. This is great.
Well, and we'll have some more episodes later on down the road coming in because we've got some ones, the canines for kids, talking about the dogs they're using in school. So we're getting those episodes set up. We've got some other stuff coming up too that'll be teed up. A friend of mine who used to be a lieutenant with the NYPD cold case squad out of one of the precincts. We got him and one of his detectives talking about some famous rap stars and some murders that went on that they investigated. But I think, Steve, we need to get JP lined up because this is episode 49 and we got episode 50 coming up. So we need to do something, it's the 50th episode. So I'm thinking a story that I don't think has really been told adequately, and it's Pablo's Hippos.
I'm liking it. It's, and I don't want to say too much about it right now because we'll do a whole episode on it, but it's phenomenal what has taken place down there. Javier and I we've got pictures of all the exotic animals that Escobar had on his ranch, and we use them in our presentation, but it's all true. It's amazing what's true. But another guest that we're getting ready to interview here, Morgan, a man, I'm not going to mention his name yet, but a man who was an award-winning National Football League player for numerous years, and then decided to become a DEA agent. Phenomenal story. This is I love this guy to death. We've worked together numerous times over the year. I can't wait for you guys to hear his story. So he's going to be coming up real soon also. It's just, we got a special guest.
We got maybe 2 special guests. And with one of these special guests, I've actually been on the front cover of a magazine with him.
Cool.
So we'll talk about that's the taller one.
So lots of good stuff coming up.
Oh yeah. And so if we get this, like I said, but we're just not pimping you guys out. We actually have had contact with a major motion movie star. And you've been in contact with him, and we had a date set, but then filming changed things. So I think we're going to get it done here in the next couple weeks.
Yep. And the other guy, we're not going to tell you his name yet, but I'm
you're going to
tell you, you're going to recognize it as soon as you hear it.
You're going to, and by the way, too, at the end of May, going into June, Steve and I will both be in San Diego at the Southern California Gang Conference. Courtesy of Mel Sosa, who's doing us a real solid by letting us come out there, or especially me, because he doesn't know me. And he's taking a big chance letting me anywhere near the town of San Diego.
Isn't that the truth?
It is. But we just got our new remote podcasting equipment in, so we will be doing remote podcasts from down there. We will be collecting some of the funnest stories. And I think, Steve, one thing we're going to do, we're going to have a segment, which I wrote down here because we did it on another one when we're having fun talking about some of our best practical jokes. We're going to get a collection of the best practical jokes cops have played on each other and just turn that into an episode, I think.
There will be no identities given. There'll be no agencies mentioned because there's some crazy shit that goes on.
And it's going to be funny, too, because, a lot of guys are going to say, well, hey, look, you can't show my face. Dude, it's a fucking podcast.
Yeah. We're not video. We're just audio.
Yeah.
So,
but maybe we'll take a selfie like some of our criminals have and, put that up there. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. We just wanted to give you a tease of what's coming on. So I think episode 50, we got to get JP lined up, but I think we'll do Pablo's Hippos. And guys, there is some stuff behind it. You won't believe the impact it's had on the country of Colombia. So we'll leave it at that.
Right.
We'll have some fun. And we want to thank you guys once again for playing the most pet-friendly, unadulterated, big bad, and as always, the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the original Game of Crimes.